For the Rich podcast. Today I'm here with keeper Catran-Whitney. Got that right. Is a
You
passionate
got it.
advocate and storyteller dedicated to supporting individuals affected by trauma. Through his work, he explores the emotional and psychological aspects of healing, emphasizing resilience, empathy, and the power of personal narratives. Keeper's platform provides resources, including podcasts and blogs, to aid in recovery and foster a supportive community. His approach integrates elements of human nature, philosophy, and psychology, is what we're going to cover today. And we're trying to inspire and reflect and see how much growth we can really get out of this episode. But just a little preface warning, could be a little triggering. We're about to get into some pretty sensitive stuff. If you want to, anything you want to say to the crowd about that, just so they know in
Yeah,
advance
sure,
what we're
Joe.
about to get into.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I know a bit about your podcast, and I am honored to be here. As it relates to your message, what we're about to get into is very sensitive and very heavy stuff. We're going to be on the topic of child sexual abuse and my family's experience and my experience as a man and what that could possibly do for an education. As he said, it could be very triggering emotionally. If you need to back away, by all means, do so. This podcast will be available to you. You can always come back to it. And as I said, it's going to be triggering not only for men, it may also be triggering for sisters and women. So protect yourself at all costs.
Got it. All right. Usually I like to get some background on my guests, but background is everything for this podcast. So let's start with your upbringing and get to know you and how you were shaped by your early experiences.
Sure, I am the author of the book Helplessness, the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. Helplessness is book one of a three-book series that I'm writing, from helplessness to hopefulness to happiness. I'm writing Hopefulness now, which looks at how do you go from helplessness to finding hope. I usually start out with a very simple question. Have you ever wondered what emotional struggles brothers go through once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused? Have you ever thought about that? Because oftentimes what happens is we'll learn about our sisters and the predators and people who empower them, but no one ever asks, what are the brothers dealing with? So through my book, Helplessness, not only do we explore that, but we answer the question through my family's very intimate, detailed story. So that is what this is about. I am a brother that comes from a family of 10, four boys, four girls, my mother and my stepfather. We were on the verge of music stardom. And I'll get into that as this story unfolds. And, Joe and I, we get into it. But we were on the verge of music superstardom when me and my four brothers learned what happened and what was going on without our knowledge for years, and the ensuing trauma and pain and all the things that come along with it. So this story is meant to educate, it is meant to inform, and it is meant to make sure that you stay vigilant. So I'm ready to go, Joe, whenever you want to, Brent.
Got you. Can you share a pivotal moment that marked the beginning of your healing journey?
Well, let me just start from the beginning. That way you will have
Yeah. Yeah,
context
yeah,
and your audience will
for
have
sure.
context. In 1971, my family was very, very poor, incredibly poor. I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. I lived in 21 different places before I
Oh
moved
my
out. I was
gosh.
homeless three times.
Wow.
And so in 1971, I am in middle school, and my mother and my stepdad just could not afford a $90 a month rent. I mean, we couldn't even afford to keep gas on. It was hard keeping food on the table. So my mother, who was a very good singer, actually absolutely brilliant, decided to get together with her brother and her sister, who were also outstanding, to form a group and look at ways of making extra money. But as good as they were, it wasn't good enough. Now, in 1971, Michael Jackson and Jackson 5, they were everywhere. I mean, they were global superstars at that time. You're hearing ABC, Who Wants You Back? You know, it was just everywhere. And every kid on the planet imagined themselves being like them. So obviously, me and my seven brothers and sisters, I'm the second oldest of eight. My mother had all eight of her kids by the time she was 24 years old. So she hears us singing and she says, one day, would you guys like to sing? Because as a singing family, we could make more money. We're like, well, yeah, of course. So the next thing you know, the Whitney family is born. We are within weeks singing in after hour nightclubs all over Los Angeles. We are just everywhere. So one Saturday, we're singing, we're rehearsing, and the phone rings. And my mother walks over to the phone and she says, hello? Who? And she turns to us and says, shh, Michael Jackson's on the phone. Yeah, that Michael Jackson, soon to be king of pop. The person, the family that we are singing like every day is on the phone to talk to us. Now, we haven't been singing all that long. So my mother looks at my brother directly under me, child number four, and says, he wants to talk to you. So my brother goes over to the phone and he says, hello? Uh huh. Okay. And he hangs up the phone and he screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of us, says for us to keep going. We'll get there someday. Now, what little poor family that could barely eat? I mean, I'm going into the streets from time to time looking for bottles to turn those in to get money so we can get a pound of ground beef or a bag of rice. That's how struggling we were. We were all, you know, we would go to parks to get the government cheese and all of that's what was my life. Rats, roaches everywhere in every house. That was the norm. But here we are being told by this guy, we can make it someday. Jump cut to
What did
1977.
that mean to you?
Well, you here. This is what it meant. In 1977, we're everywhere. We're doing concerts, TV. We're magazines. We are everywhere. So what did that mean? That meant our dream could literally happen. And 6 years later, there it is happening. In 1977, we are with United Artists Records. We, that year, made Billboard magazine's coveted top 100 not once, not twice, but three
Damn,
times. Album, two
killing
singles.
it.
Yeah, we were everywhere. 1977 also happened to be the year, Joe, that Motown completed their exhaustive search of 3 years to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, who they had lost 3 years earlier to Epic Records. And who did they choose? They chose my family.
No way. That's
We
crazy.
were it. Yeah, think about the irony of this. In 77, Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, who are with Motown, calls our house and says, keep going, you'll get there someday. And then 6 years later, we have been tabbed to replace him at Motown. We were we were ready. We were done. With all the poorness, we had all the fame. We just did not have the. We had the yeah. We had the fame. We just didn't have the money. So we were still struggling, but our dreams were about to come true. The week we are about to sign the largest new artist contract Motown offered any new group. In
Is your
fact,
music out there still? By the way.
yeah. In fact, the woman who discovered Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 in Gary, Indiana, Suzanne DePass, is the one bringing us to Motown. She's like, oh yeah,
Mm.
this is it. If the Jackson 5 have one lead singer, you guys have eight. You have nine. You have a boys group, a girls group. You can do duos, you can do trios, you can do all of you can do singles. What? Geez, there's just so much here. This is amazing.
What What was
They
the
had
stage
even
presence like? Were you
go ahead.
dancing also?
We did all of it. sang, danced. I was a drummer. My brothers played keyboard and guitar and all that stuff. We did all of it. Everyone sang lead, everyone sang
Damn.
background. We did
Wow.
all of it. So in 1977, here we are. We're about to sign the largest new artist contract. It's going to take place on a Thursday or Friday of that week in the summer of 77. The Saturday before that, my oldest sister screams upstairs, "Boys, come downstairs, family meeting." This is it. It's about to happen. We're going to learn what day this is going to happen. So I come downstairs. United Artists is paying for our house. We can't afford to pay for it. But because we're with them and yet we're about to leave them, and we are indebted to them by almost $250,000 at 77, that is a tremendous amount of money. So
Damn.
here we are about to, Motown had created the TV show for us. I had the pilot episode in my office. It's called At Wit's End, a play on the Whitney family. It was a variety show.
Wow. That is that is cool.
Dude, the bus was outside. The engine was running. The door was open. All we had to do was walk outside to get on the bus, and we were gone. No more poverty. Fame, riches, glory was right there. So my sister calls this meeting. I am the last of us eight to come into the living room. But when I walk into the living room, I notice my three youngest sisters, and they are the youngest of us eight. In fact, the two youngest are twins, are sitting in the far corner of the couch. And they're huddled, not saying a word, which was really odd because all they did was ever talk. They never stopped talking, laughing and joking. In fact, that's all we ever did with each other. We laughed, we joked, we did everything together. We didn't gang bang. We didn't hit the streets. We didn't do any of that stuff. We sang, we rehearsed, we went to school, we slept, we repeat. That was our life. We were intent on getting out of South Central LA because it was flooded with the Crips and the Bloods and gang banging everywhere. Poverty was everywhere. This was our meal ticket out. So my three sisters are sitting in the far corner. I'm thinking, what's going on? Why aren't they saying anything? My two youngest brothers are also sitting on the couch, but they're like me. They're like, what is going on? How come the girls aren't talking? We're about to become superstars. We're about to become rich. Every dream is about to come to fruition. So my two youngest brothers are like me. My oldest brother is standing at the far end of the couch, Joe, and I lock eyes on him. And he looks at me, the same curious look. How come no one's happy? What's the deal? As I walked into the living room, my oldest sister was passing back and forth in front of the entryway leading into the living room, and she is pissed. She is mad. That wasn't all that odd because she and my mother could get into it, and earlier that day, she and my sisters were in bedrooms back and forth. You could hear doors slamming, or they'd go into a bathroom and you could hear raised voices. And you hear my mother, so I'm thinking, okay, she and my mother got into it over something. Okay, and she's upset, but it's all about to be good because we're about to be really happy and really rich. But she's mad. Within minutes of me coming in, my mother and stepfather enter the living room. Now we have a brown recliner in the middle of the living room that clashes tremendously with this bright green carpet. It's just brown, green, it just doesn't work, but that's all we had. My stepfather sits on the recliner, and Joe, he immediately does this. What the hell? Why did he do that? That doesn't make sense. Not today. What's going on?
All this body language, just
My
context
mother,
clues. Yeah.
dude, we don't have a clue. My brothers and I are absolutely clueless. My mother, who's usually effervescent, bubbly, like her children, is stoic. She's got this mad look on her face. She walks to the middle of the room. It stands in front of this large window that overlooks outside. She spins around and scans the room and looks at her 8 children. She locks eyes with my oldest sister and she's looking daggers at her like she could kill her. My oldest sister is defiant. Damn, this is not making any sense. What did I miss? Exactly. What did I miss? My mother is about to tell us why we are there. And it's not for the reason that I thought we were going to be there. Now, I live in Southern California and we have earthquakes all the time. They uproot trees, they break freeways, they rock houses. Those are material earthquakes. Those things can be put back together with hammer, nail, rebar, you name it. Pop, pop, pop. It's all back up. Get back on the road. Get back in the house.
Damn,
But
this is
emotional
worse than that.
earthquakes, yeah, emotional
Mm,
earthquakes, you do not
woo.
come back from those completely. My 3 brothers and I are about to
That's
be
a
hit
crazy
with
metaphor.
3 emotional earthquakes. Yeah, metaphor exactly. We're about to be hit with 3 emotional earthquakes in 10 minutes. My mother is about to utter the words no brother could ever prepare for, no words a brother could ever imagine hearing. And these are the earthquakes. Number one, your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. What? Wait a minute. What did you say? Who? What sisters? Who, what are you talking about? I am emotionally falling. I have just had a, an abyss just opened in the middle of our living room floor, and I am dropping emotionally. I don't know what just happened.
Damn.
I'm hearing snippets of things as she's continuing to talk, but I'm really slow on the uptake because how could this be? Not our family. We're the family everybody wants to be like. All of our friends stay so. We want to be in your family. You guys are perfect. What? No, 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 no. Impossible. But I'm hearing liquor store, apartment, park. And I'm like, no, this, Joe, I don't know what to do. I am rocked back. And then how do I recover? And then earthquake number 2 is dropped on me and my brothers. My mother says, I have known all along. Oh, no, 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 no. You've known what all along? You have known this has been
Damn.
going on in our house all along? You have known he has been molesting and raping our sisters for years? And you let it happen? You empowered him? Further and further down the abyss, I travel emotionally. Shock, disbelief, guilt, and blame is just overwhelming me. And I imagine my 3 brothers as well, because we had no idea this was taking place in our house. And then earthquake number 3 is dropped by my oldest sister, who's pacing back and forth, ready to destroy my mother. And it's the earthquake that is the most devastating one of all for a brother. As devastating as the first two are, what my sister is about to say destroys me and my brothers emotionally. It's near impossible to come back from it. She points a finger at her four innocent brothers and says, "You can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about it ever." And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so incredibly tight. All we did was hang out with each other, laying on the living room floor, destroyed. Now you're a brother. You've just been hit with the words, "You can't talk about it." When you hear that as a brother, what you hear is, "You don't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Nothing you have to say matters." We were locked down like that because the people we needed to speak to the most, who could help us understand, just told us, "We want nothing to do with you. Never bring this up. Never approach us. You have to deal with this on your own." And therein lies the beginning of my 40-year journey to find happiness. So I toss it to you.
And what's crazy is you didn't even mention music yet, right? Like, we're just talking about your own personal family trauma here. We're not even getting into like dreams, like
The
collateral,
music,
all the damage that comes with that.
you're absolutely, the word collateral is it. Me and my brothers are collateral damage because it did happen to us. We just didn't know it. It had been happening to us. We just didn't know it. We would talk to our sisters and we'd have conversations, and for some reason, unbeknownst to us, their reaction did not match what the reaction should have been for a question or something. But what it did, whatever we said or whatever we were joking about, triggered them. And so they would lash out or they would shut down. And so, as it relates to the music with Motown, that was a done deal. It was over. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing, the loss of the Motown thing was one thing, but the loss of your family, the loss of what you believed your family to be for years, that's the big trauma. Because as a brother, you start to go through all this shame. You start to go through this emotional crisis. You've got a psychological and emotional impact of what happened and how do you come back from this. You are confused. You want to go to this place that you want to protect, but you don't know how. You don't know what to do because the trauma and the way that it was presented to you, you have no way to regulate your emotions. Now, for my sisters, unfortunately, they could regulate their emotions because they had already been going through it since 1971, the 1971 that we started singing, the 1971 when we first heard from Michael Jackson. They had already been going through it for 6 years. So they were under threat. If you tell your brothers, "I'm going to do this to you," if you tell your brothers, "I'm going to hurt them," if you do this, we are not going to be able to get out of this abject poverty that we are in the midst of. So you can't tell anyone. And so, not telling anyone and my mother knowing it allowed my stepfather to continue to molest our sisters for years and years and years. And so, my sisters already had found a place. I'm not going to say a safe place, but they had already found a place, as many sisters who go through this kind of thing do. They begin to think, if I tell my brother, what's that going to do? What what threat are they going to be under from my father or my stepfather or whoever the adult is that's doing this. And so they go into this protective mode. So I understand what my sister did.
I'm
So,
curious if
yeah.
you feel like being told you can't talk about it is a way of maybe belittling or downplaying the situation. Like it's not that bad. Is that what the impression that you might have
No,
got, or like
no,
don't make it a big
no,
deal?
no, not at all. My sister, my oldest sister, was going into protective mode for her and her youngest sisters. It was purely, and this is what I
Mhm.
learned years later, she was purely protecting them because even though her four brothers are innocent and they have absolutely no clue what had been going on, the fact of the matter is, through gender proximity, we are almost as guilty as our stepfather. Because for them, the perpetrator of the crime, their their brothers have one thing in common with him, and that's what's between our legs. That made us almost as guilty as him. And in fact, for my older sister, it made us in many ways even more guilty because even though it was all kept a secret, it was meant to keep us out of the conversation. Her feeling is we still should have known, but how do we know? How are we supposed to find out if no one is telling us what is going on? But my sisters are protecting themselves. So that's what she was doing when she said, don't talk about it. It took me years to understand that, to come to an emotional acceptance of that. Because I just wasn't mature enough at that age. Because, like I said, all we did was sing, rehearse, go to school, wake up, and repeat. So our life wasn't filled with a bunch of as much social interaction as many kids do. Ours was very closed. It was very isolated.
Interesting. Wow, that, that is a lot to take in there. What about like initially coping and the emotional aftermath of it? Because I'm curious, do you ever confront the stepdad?
Yes, yes, twice in fact. In the immediate aftermath of the 10 minutes, I know why my mother and stepfather took minutes to come downstairs after me, because what they did, as soon as my oldest sister said that, my stepfather faked a heart attack. And my mother said, we got to get him out of the house. We got to get him to the hospital. So she immediately got him away from us before the brothers could figure out what is going on and what we're going to do and how we're going to react. She immediately got him out of the house to protect her and him. But there's still more to come because as a brother and my sisters, we sat in the living room for about 10 minutes. No one said a word. And eventually we started to disperse because we have to go forward. So I went into my bedroom and I am, as I said, confused. I'm shocked. I'm in total disbelief. I'm in denial. I'm in anger. I'm in a betrayal state because if how could I not know that I have to have been betrayed them, even though I wasn't told, I didn't know anything about it, but you're still feeling all this stuff. Your self esteem takes a hit. So much is just under attack emotionally. You are in a PTSD state. You're going through post traumatic stress disorder. And as a young teenager, you don't know how to cope with this. Adults can't handle this. So, as we try to figure out what we're going to do next, not just from a singing standpoint, but as a family, but as a young man, how am I going to deal with this? I go to my bedroom and I don't know what to do. I'm completely lost. And so are my three brothers. We don't know what to do. As I said, when adults hear this kind of thing, they can't handle it. And the people who we believe should have been the ones to help us, they're the ones committing the crime. In fact, when you're a child, the most important people in your life are your parents because they're the ones teaching you, they're nurturing you, they're showing you the ways of the world, and they are the most important and most powerful people you know. And in our case, the most powerful people we knew were the ones committing the crime. Now, I will also say this: whenever I speak on this topic, invariably there will be a woman who says, "Well, your sister was right. You boys can't talk about it because it didn't happen to you." Well, I say it did. It happened differently. We're collateral damage. But then when I share 6 years before my sisters were sexually abused, my older brother and I in 1966 were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. To answer your question, my in the immediate aftermath, what was I going through emotionally? Going up to my room and knowing that my world had just broken. There was just loss everywhere. There was no denying this. My family, which I thought it was one thing, turns out had this very dark secret. And so I'm alone. We're all going our separate ways, and no one is talking as we leave the living room, me and my brothers and sisters. And I just remember not wanting to go into the bedroom because I knew at that point I would really be alone. And it was very similar to knowing that there's a maelstrom in my bedroom. There's a swirling whirlpool, and that there's this emotional shark just waiting for me to step in. And once I'm in there, it was just going to just open its mouth and just swallow you up.
That's very visceral.
Uh, you know, that's what I think happens for most people who go through a lot of trauma. We don't want to be alone. That's on the one hand, we want to be around people, but we don't want to be around them because everybody asking us questions. But we also don't want to be alone. And it was really scary. And when I got in there, Joe, it was just so many things. The anger of knowing what my mother and my stepfather did, the confusion and all this emotional crisis and family crisis really just taking over. And so you go into this depression, and as I said, I'm isolated, which is the place I shouldn't be, especially at my age. But I really had no choice. And so I just stayed there thinking about, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? Because there was, you throw in the music part of it, there's a lot that we have to consider. It's not, I was asked in another podcast, so what was it like to when things were normal? For us, things were never normal because you throw in the music, that just adds to what the average family doesn't have to deal with, And so it was very, very scary being in my room by myself.
It's a good way to put it. You're like, even I can't relate to people even more so. That's crazy.
Exactly.
You're feeling even more singled out. So that's crazy.
Yeah,
Never thought
because
about that.
you're thinking, okay, we don't want aunts and uncles to know. You're trying to figure out who do you tell, who do you go to. At the same time, you've got fans, right? And you certainly don't want them to know, and you don't want all of that to start coming out as a shotgun. It's just blam. It's just all out there. It's not that we could control any of it, but those are the things that I'm additionally thinking. And you
You were
it was a bad
worried
place to
about
be.
perception. You were future thinking, and then
You had to
perception.
be. We all
Everyone
were. It
else's.
turns out, as I spoke to my brothers and sisters later, 40 years later, they were going through the same thing, perception. You know, uh, you don't want your boyfriend to know. You don't want your girlfriend to know. You don't want your closest friends to know. And so that's part of the stigma that is associated with this type of trauma. And particularly when it involves sexual abuse or child sexual abuse, there's really no way to describe the pain and what you're dealing with.
I think one of the initial questions I had was how you ended up coping with all that.
You know, back in 1977, you could go into any bookstore and you could find, and I say this in an unfortunate way, but you could find millions of articles written by women on sexual
Whoa.
abuse. You could find books, you could find articles, you could see a TV show every now and then. There would be documentaries, there would be interviews, you know, but there were resources for women. For men, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So if there's nothing available for men, what's a child supposed to deal with? Because there were no 12-step programs. There were no, as I said, books, magazines, documentary. Even today, the same thing applies. There's very little in the way of resources for men, and obviously because brothers don't get the time of day, there is nothing available to us. So I was very much on my own trying to figure it out. And the biggest thing for me was realizing, because I didn't know, how could I miss what happened to my sisters? That in and of itself was a personal betrayal for me. But as one of my sisters said, he used to wait for you boys to go outside and go play football or basketball. And then he would make his move. He needed you guys out of the way. And yet, knowing that there was no way that I could know, I still feel a very large sense of betrayal. And you know, the self-esteem of being a brother. I think the definition of what it means to be a brother is protect your sister's honor. And as time went forward, because my mother said she would handle the situation, at the end of the day, nothing happened for my sisters for almost 9 years. Nothing. And that is another feeling of betrayal for me, because how could I not do anything? And I can always go back to what you said, we couldn't talk to you about it. You didn't want us involved. You wanted us out of the way. So I'm honoring that. But when you see them at a Thanksgiving, or you see them at Christmas, or you see them at someplace, you could see them looking at you. How come you haven't done anything? How come you haven't said anything? And, you know, you said don't do anything. So it wasn't until 1986 when things got to be really, really dark. I'm 3 months away from getting married, is when
Timing.
I could not take it anymore. And I took matters into my own hands. And on a warm summer night, 1986, I was going to be married in November. I almost killed my stepfather.
Do you want to go into detail on like how? I don't know
Sure,
if that's
sure.
appropriate.
No, it's all appropriate. You get to a place. You remember we talked about the difference between emotional health and mental health, and if you
Mm-hmm.
can't have your emotional health solved, you go to this mental place, and it's isolated. You're alone, and you're in your head the whole time. So 3 months before I was to get married, I'm telling my fiance, who's my wife now, we've been married 38 years. I told her on a Friday, I need to go back home for the weekend. I need to handle something. Now, my mother had brought him back into the house.
Yeah.
The betrayal just never stopped. And I told my fiance, I said, so I need to handle this. And she said to me, is everything okay? And I said, well, I think so. She said, is there anything I can do to help? No, you can't. I will see you tomorrow. And you could just see the stricken look on her face. She was very, very concerned, as I would be too, with cryptic answers like that. You know, who wouldn't, you know? So I went outside, hopped in my little orange Fiat X19, And I went back home. When I go home, I go upstairs. My old bedroom is still there. There are 2 bedrooms upstairs when I lived there. There was my bedroom at the top of the stairs, and 30 feet down the hall was my mother and my stepfather's bedroom. I knew what I was getting ready to do. I go into my bedroom and I close the door. Joe, I am waiting to hear the sound of my mother and stepfather's door open. I'm waiting for him to come out. I had gone to this really, really dark place. And it was 2 hours of me lying on the bed, sweating. It was just the breeze coming in, and I could hear the crickets outside. And I don't like the sound of crickets, so they were just agitating me even more. And it's sitting on the bed. I can do this. I can do this. Oh, but he's so much bigger than me. He's 6'6", 250 pounds. He towers over me. I can't even look over his shoulder. And then I start thinking like, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this. And then poop in my head, images of my little sisters being brought into a closet and him doing this and him unzipping his pants and then him having them do what he eventually had them do. And then we get the courage again. So it was 2 hours of that. I'm lying on the bed and I hear it creak. That's it. Their door has just opened. I sit up and swing my feet and put them on the floor. Okay, it is now or never. If you don't do this today, you will never do this. And he will be around your sisters from this point on. I get up, I open the door, and I crack it just enough to look down the hall. He's coming out of the door of their bedroom. Now, I had already thought about this for months, what I was going to do on this day. And I knew where I wanted to meet him in the upstairs hall. Overlooking our stairs was a short 3.5-foot wall. And I knew I was going to have to meet him there in the middle. But I knew when I met him there, I could not have my back to the short wall. Because if he didn't like what I was about to say, all he had to do was push, and I'm tumbling down, falling down a flight of stairs, snapping my neck, I'm dead. So I can't be there. Definitely not. But I could position myself any other place in the hall. So he's starting to come down the hall, and I freeze. You don't want to do this. Look how big he is. He's even bigger looking now. The instrument of his death is leaning against the door jamb. It is my favorite baseball bat. My mother would throw 3 picnics a year for us, and I think that was her way of trying to give something nice, knowing what she had allowed to happen. So we played softball for years, and I hit many home runs with that bat. It was my favorite bat. It was meant for my hands. I hand-picked it at Big 5 Sporting Goods. It was there waiting. I had brought it from my fiance's. He's coming down the hall and I step out. And as I step out, he sees me and he says, "Hey!" And I'm just looking. And his face drops. Oh, something's up. I don't say a word. He starts walking toward me. I start walking toward him. And we meet in the middle, right at the short wall. However, God damn it, if my back is not against the short wall, I have to spin him around. Because what I'm about to tell him, like I said, if he doesn't like it, he has to just tap me and I'm dead. And all he has to say is that it was an accident. He's golden. He's good. So I start getting closer to him, and I'm able to position my body in such a way that it causes him to move. I move to his right, to my left, and I'm able to get him where I need him to be. because I was in a dead panic. I was so scared. I'm like, dude, you have fucked up. So there we are, face to chest, because my face could only come to his chest. That's how much taller he was than me.
Damn.
And I realized, what the hell? I had no idea he was this big. Because now
Oh,
I'm in a fear state. Anxiety is overtaking me, and everything is magnified. Every emotion is magnified. And I am thinking, oh my God, what am I about to do? He is going to just crush me. He's 6'6", 250. I'm 5'8", 145 pounds. He outweighs me by over 100 pounds. And I can't even look over his shoulder. My face is at his chest. I got the resolve, and I looked up the side of that mountain and said, you have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, you will be dead because I will have killed you. Turned around and walked back to my room, shaking, trembling, and I hear footsteps behind me. I did not bring my bat out at the time because I didn't want to agitate the situation just yet. So it's still resting against the door jamb. I open the door and I still hear footsteps. I close the door really fast and I stand back, I grab the bat. The bedroom is dark and I'm just waiting for the door to open. I'm ready. I am ready. I'm like, yeah, come on in here. Bring it. Come on, this is it. But I realize the footsteps are getting softer and softer. He is walking back toward their bedroom. And I sit on the bed. Okay. I hear their door close. And I get up, go downstairs, get in the car, and go back to my fiance's place. And she says, is everything okay? I said, I will know tomorrow. She says, what does that mean? I mean, I have
if
to
he's
make
still there.
sure the job is done. Now, I had lost weight. I had stopped eating for almost 3 months. I was eating very little. I was so emotionally distraught. Yeah, I had to make sure he's gone. So I get up the next day, hop back in the Fiat, bring the bat with me, get out of the car and walk to the front door, bat in hand. Okay, I know he's here and I know what's behind that door, but I decide to leave my bat outside because I figured, okay, I don't want to trigger him any more than is necessary. Even though I'm expecting to open the door and he's pointing his 38 in my face. I'm waiting, but I'm leaving this at the door. I open the door and I walk in the house. I don't see him. Go to the bottom of the stairs, listen. I don't hear a sound. Walk into the living room, walk through the kitchen, walking through the dining room, still no sound, but I hear some noise at the back of the room. My own younger brother is back there working on some music. I open the door and I say to him, is he still here? He says, no, he left. He left last night and he has not come back. He was finally gone, but he wasn't gone for good. So the brother,
Damn.
me, got him out of the house. But comes my wedding 3 months later, and I know that I'm trying to figure out a way to create a relationship with my mother so that we can work on this, so that we not necessarily be friends or anything like that, but so it can help the family start to heal. And this is where the greatest regret of my life takes place. It happens to be my wedding. When I say I'm going to do something, if I give you my word that I'm going to do something, I'm usually pretty good at it. And I will suffer the consequences, come what may. So a week before our wedding, I'm talking to my soon-to-be wife, and I said, look, I'm going to offer my mom an olive branch and tell her what the conditions are. And she said, I think that's a good idea because we want it to be a nice wedding. And we, even though she's different, we'd like her there. So I told her what I was thinking, and she agreed. She thought it was good. But we both agreed that we don't want certain things to happen after I make the offer. So I go to my mom and I tell her, I said, look, I know you are all about image. I know you want to give the image that we are a cohesive family, we're good. So let me say this and understand, Joe, I'm trying to extend an olive branch, but I never should have done this, ever, not in this way. I told her, I said, because image is so important to you, understand I do not want him there, period. I do not want him at the wedding, but if you want to invite him, you can, but we do not want you to do that. We don't want you to do it at all, period. Do not do it. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to make nice. Her response was not what I was expecting. I figured she would step up. She said, okay, let me think about it. And I knew in that moment what I had done. I knew what she was going to do. Come the day of the wedding, she invited him. She invited him to be in the wedding party. And the brother who finally got rid of him, who is trying to help the family heal by bringing some closure with my mother, something that we could work on, put him back in front of his sisters. He's in so many wedding pictures. We hate our wedding pictures because he's in them. I did that. I know what it did to my sisters. And the psychological and the emotional impact of family and what is at stake. I had already lost everything and I'm trying to pull it back together. I'm the one trying to make things work. No one else is. But that was the wrong thing to do. In the moment, I knew she was going to say, no, I'm not going to invite him. Are you serious? No way. He's not coming. But she did it. And
What is, not to interrupt you, but
no, no,
what is
please
the
go ahead.
lesson here? Is it like
Mm-hmm.
you're evoking the past in a sense to people please there, or is it deeper than that? Like, what do you think that was?
What do you mean by people, please?
Like, maybe that wasn't the right word, but I'm just
Mm.
thinking like you're trying anything to find, or maybe console, uh, restructure, put back together everything. So is that just you were trying to find any way that would make her want to be involved? Because it almost seems like you were testing her a little bit.
No, she was going to be involved because I asked her to make my tuxedo, which she did. Absolutely gorgeous. She made our wedding cake.
Wow,
But I knew what she what she wanted. And I
damn,
thought for some reason that me and my brothers and sisters could could handle it emotionally. Like I said, you go through so many ups and downs and flips and sideways. And when it comes to family, particularly when
I
it's
mean,
a
I can
family that,
relate though.
yeah, I think a
I can
lot of
relate
people
to
can.
wanting maybe your mom to just be happy in all circumstances, right?
Well,
Whatever it
it
takes.
wasn't so much about her happiness, but I knew that I was in a possible position to bring sisters back into the fold who I hadn't seen for quite a while. I knew the wedding could be that kind of thing to kind of jumpstart us, have some foundation to build on. And that's all I was thinking
How would
about.
you have done it different now if you could go back?
I would not have made the offer. We just would have
Damn.
gone in, the nine of us, period, and let people ask their questions. See, at the wedding, there were music people there, and there were entertainment, people, celebrities and stuff. And my mother really wanted to give and like I said, I knew what she craved. I knew what she needed. And so I wanted to try to be the brother who could bring the family together. And in the one sense, I did when I got rid of him, and 3 months earlier, finally. But then I
I'm
destroyed
curious
everything
if
I
you
had done.
have you always had this mediator role in your family?
Not always, but I have always been viewed as the person who handles things. I've always been viewed as the handle, the brother who does it. In fact, when we were poor, I was the child who would go get a job when I'm 5 years old, when I'm 9 years old in the fifth grade. I'm the brother
Damn.
who was always looking for ways to make money where the others weren't. So one Christmas, my mother, who kept calling me her little businessman, she said, "Okay, here's your Christmas present." She got me a gold-plated Social Security card because that's what all I
What?
wanted for Christmas. At 9 years old, that's all I wanted for Christmas was a Social Security card so I could go apply for jobs. Does that make any sense?
Damn.
But
It's crazy.
that's who I was. And so uh, yeah, if something needed to be done, even to this day, they know if you need someone to ride with you, if you need someone to have the hard conversation with someone, you go to Keeper. Keeper will handle it. Where everyone else will shy away, he will deal with it. And he will deal with the consequences and the fallout.
You just made me think also, who wouldn't hire a kid bringing like a fancy social security card?
Dude, it was nuts. Gold plated. Like,
What?
I was so happy to get that. I would sneak away from the house when my mother would tell me not to. We used to go to the Rams. We used to live in a shithole place, but it's about 5 blocks from the LA Coliseum. And the Rams would play night games. And I wanted to make some money. So I told my mom, I'm going to go there and sell some programs. And she said, "No, you're not. You're you're too young." I snuck away anyway. Went there.
Damn.
Guy hired me. I outsold all the adults. Brought home $70 in tips.
Hell
And I
yeah.
told her what I did, and she was pissed. But she held out her hand and took that $70. That I
I
know.
bet. But were you proud of yourself though?
Always. Yeah, because once again, I'm handling stuff. Uh, I had never walked to the LA Coliseum, but our house, being 5 blocks away, had a huge lot, glass, people junk, furniture. That's where we got a lot of furniture from that house. People just throwing junk out. It was tires, you name it. So we would clear a path so people could park their cars there, and we would charge them to park. And down the street from us was USC, College for the Wealthy, the Rich, and the Affluent. So there was always a bunch of white rich people walking around. So I figured the way to get to the Coliseum is follow the white people because they're going to the Ram game. If they're parking here in our front yard in the lot, I'm just going to follow them. That's all I have to do. That's exactly what
You're
I
smart.
did. And I got to the Coliseum and I just remembered my way back. But that's who I
That's
am.
some
That's what I do.
just context clues and observing. That's crazy at a young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
Wow. Damn. Lot more bravery back then too. Holy crap. What role did your family play in your healing process?
We went 40 years without talking about this. My brothers and I never talked about it. Obviously, my sisters and I didn't talk about it. My sisters played the most important role in my healing, without question. I want to talk to them, but I know I can't So in 2013, I decide I do not want my family's story to be a one that ends in tragedy. It must be used to heal and uplift people. They can live through our story. They can live through me, other brothers and other men who I know are going through this. So I decided to write Helplessness in 2013. I know I'm going to
How old
write
were you at
this.
it?
Oh, what was that? 11 years ago? So I'm 54.
Got you.
And the great speaker and author Lisa Nichols, motivational speaker, is having an event down in San Diego. And her name of her event, Joe, is How to Write a Book in 20 Minutes. Now, at the time, I'm very big in network marketing. The companies like Avon, Amway, Mary Kay, all that sort of stuff. I'm really big in that industry. In fact, I've written books and I had a media company, a magazine for that, and made good money with it. So I'm going
Hell
to go
yeah.
down to San Diego and write a book on how these companies can attract a younger market, because it's all typically old. They don't ever focus on the future, which is how do you engage younger audience. So I'm going down
Same
there.
problem.
Exactly. Same problem today. Nothing's changed. So as I'm thinking about the book I'm going to write, helplessness starts pushing to the forefront. You need to write this book. Okay, so I know I'm going to go down to San Diego to write the book on the youth and urban market, but helplessness is there. So what do? I call my second sister. Yeah, we have not talked about this at all. And I tell her, because I feel if I'm going to write this book, Helplessness, my sisters need to know what's coming. Because as the book begins to get some traction, I don't want them to be blindsided again, not by me. I'm not pulling a wedding day event on them again. So I called her and I said, I want to talk to you about something. I'm going to write a book, but I need to talk to you. And she said, okay, come on over. So I went right over, and we're standing out in front of her house, in front of her garage, and I tell her, I said, I want to write a book about what brothers experience emotionally once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by their parents. I know what you're going to say. And she immediately said, you should write it. I said, what? Yes, you should write the book. But you guys said you didn't want us to talk about it. She said, listen, I think men and brothers should know what brothers go through. It's not my story. It's not a girl's story. It's your story. And you should absolutely write it. Dude, I broke down. I could not believe it. 40
Because
years of not talking about it. And now she's showing me grace and she's showing me love. And she's saying, write the book. I was a mess. I just could not stop crying. That, the lesson there is, I decided to talk. I stopped keeping it in. And I think on the healing path, you initially have to accept the fact that you are in trauma and know that it's part of your reality. You can't escape it. And part of that reality is it is sunk into your DNA. It's part of your marrow. It's you. Yeah, go
It
ahead.
also felt like you were like trying to find like solace in a sense, or looking for approval. Like, am I allowed to?
I didn't go there for permission because I was going to do it anyway. But I definitely think there was a part of me that wanted that. Because I told her I'm going to write the book anyway. I just want you guys to know what's coming. But I'm sure that there was that approval that I was looking for, especially from one of my sisters. And so I was outside the garage just crying, and I couldn't believe it. I knew I had to call my two other sisters. One of them, my
Did
youngest, I knew would never talk to me. So
Were
I
you
called
crying
the city.
also because you felt like you could have like been doing this earlier, like you should have started this earlier?
Yeah, yeah.
Damn.
But when you are locked down so hard emotionally, like we were, you're walking on eggshells the whole time. And you're like waiting for the opportunity. But then when you realize the opportunity is never going to present itself, you have to step in. You have to lean into what it is you want to do, come what may.
And is this something that you would say is always on your head? Like, are you constantly thinking about this every day when you're, say, walking on
Yes,
eggshells? Like, they don't necessarily have to be in your presence, it's still on your mind all the time.
there was no escaping it because there are songs that you would hear that would trigger a memory of you guys growing up and playing or singing and just the good times, or you'd see some movie or see some commercial with a family having a great time, and I'm just a mess. And for my kids, they didn't understand it for a long time until I eventually told them what was going on. So there was no escaping it. And so it was always front of mind because I wanted I wanted them. I not only did I want them to approve of me, I wanted them to respect me. And I know the only way to do that is I have to take care of things for them. And so um, I knew writing the book in the way I was going to write it from a brother's perspective, something that had never been done before. Uh, and then for her to say what she said, it was amazing. But then I had to call the
My
sister who
other
said,
question,
you can't talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
my other question is what that does to somebody like long term growing up. How does that affect your socialization skills, you know?
The trauma,
Yeah, just holding all that in and not even being able to tell anyone and this being on your mind all the time.
the ability to heal depends on, first of all, accepting. And once you do that, but once I spoke to my sisters, I knew I had a chance to recover. I knew I had a chance to start the healing process because before that, I was still lost. Even though we, like I said, we might see each other at an event or something. The For young men who went through or gone through what we're going through, every woman or girl that you are impacted or you come in contact with is impacted by that event. There's no escaping it. Every relationship that I was in was going to have that burden as part of the baggage that I'm carrying. So that's that's what you're
It's
dealing with.
interesting. It just makes me wonder how many other people out there aren't talking about that or dealing with that in relationships now that you don't even know your partner has gone through something like that. It's a lot to deal with. How do you even, you can trust somebody as much as you want, but that's like so personal, might not even be relevant. How do you even open up about something like that?
It is very difficult. My wife, it wasn't until halfway through the writing of the book that I even recognized that I was a victim. And this was at 57. We're in the bed talking, and I'm saying, look, I'm in this section in the book, and I'm having difficulty with it. And she turns and looks at me and she says, you know, you're a victim. And I said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. All of you boys are victims. What are you talking about? I'm not a victim. I'm just sharing this part of the story about it. She says, look at you. You're a mess. You're sweating. You're shaking. You can't even get the thoughts out. How can you not see you are not a victim? And it wasn't until she said that I realized I was a victim. I didn't even recognize what our babysitter had done to me, that I was a victim of child sexual abuse, until the day after, when I decided to Google, okay, was what she was doing to me, was that sexual abuse? Yes. So when you say carrying stuff that your spouse or your partner doesn't know that is impacting the relationship, yeah, you need to come clean with some shit.
Damn. And I've researched quite a bit on that, on how that can evoke hypersexuality too, if that happens at a really young age.
Yeah, hypersexuality, masculine become toxicity. Uh, it can drive you to repeat what happened to you. You can go way overboard, like you're saying, with sexuality. Yeah, there is so much. And a lot of it is because we are not facing our trauma in the way that we should. We're not dealing with it.
Damn. And I'm just thinking about age, how much age has to affect all this too, right? Like obviously there's not a more appropriate age for it, but it
No.
seems
Yeah.
like the younger it is, the more damage is done in a sense.
Yeah, of course, because you have much longer to deal with it. And in younger, you go through this period of immaturity. And so, how do you wrap your head around it? You don't. In many ways, you decide to acquiesce to the predator. You give them access to you because you think, oh, this is love, when it's not love at all.
Damn.
But because you're a child and it's the love of a parent or someone who's close to you, you're thinking, oh, this is the normal way because they introduced it to you. Don't tell your mother, which is what he did to my sisters. Oh, we do this all the time. It's just time for you guys to start learning how to do this. This is, they heard all that stuff. And so when you're really young, you accept that as being the truth because these are the most powerful people in your life. And you don't want to disappoint the most powerful people in your life. You want them to be happy. It happens all the time. One of the
How
things I would tell you about my book, and after talking to my sisters, they did something that I would never have expected. Three of my sisters contribute to helplessness. They have sections in the book. Like, what? Two brothers write sections in the book. Now imagine going from where I was to them now saying, when I asked them, would you like to write a section? Because I think it would be important for people to see a full family view, not just my view. But they all agree. But so we went from not talking about it to you're going to write a section in helplessness, and you're going to write a section in hopefulness, and you're going to write a section in happiness. But that's how far we had come in our healing process with each other because I talked.
can how has the perspective on trauma and healing evolved over time?
My perspective on trauma and healing, first of all, it goes back to the difference between emotional health and mental health, which we talked about earlier. My Mine has been a kind of a lonely road because what I want to talk about, there's no counseling for it. In 2021, my step, my old, uh, my old stepfather was having an event to celebrate the passing of his then wife's life, and he posted it on Facebook. And I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, he just invited me. I'm gonna go. This is gonna see my face again. I'm gonna bring real closure for my sisters." And so I went there at a church in Van Nuys, which was about turns out 15 minutes from me. I'm like, "You live that close?" So I went, me and
Damn.
my older brother. I let the service go on, and I won't go into a lot of detail about it, but it was very, very spectacular. It's really, really, really big in the book. It's great. But after I did what I did and I stripped him down and I took over the church after the service for 90 minutes, I took control of the church for an hour and a half after the service was done.
Wow.
I waited for the service to conclude. But in the church, there was the pastor, and there was a pastor from another church and a family counselor. Me and my brother are there, and the pastor does not come to us in any way and says, "Do you gentlemen need any help?" The female pastor from Chatsworth doesn't. Neither does the counselor. So I get home the next day and I start contacting family therapists, people who've gone through this type of sexual abuse counseling, and I call, and they were all women. And I said, I want to talk to you about the situation that my family has gone through. And from a brother's standpoint, this is what I'm dealing with, and how do you suggest? Every one of them told me, I can't help you because you're a man. I don't know what to do with this. If you were a woman, I could help you. I said, what do you mean you can't help me? I'm in pain. I'm in trauma. But I don't know how to do anything for a brother. I've never dealt with this. I've never even heard of anything like this. I said, but you are a family counselor. You are a family therapist, right? And so they said, yes. I said, so imagine I'm driving and my entire family is killed. And I'm the only surviving member of the family. Could you help me? Yes. I said, well, it's the same situation. I have lost my family. I'm in trauma. I'm in pain. Can you help me with this? Nope. You're a brother and I don't know what to do. And so today, that still exists. There's no help for brothers on this topic. My book is the first and only book of its kind.
That's crazy because we were talking about how it got my attention, and it literally got my attention because it doesn't exist.
It does
That's
not
amazing.
exist. And so I
Wow.
really am happy that my sisters participated because they helped bring us together. But as I said, Joe, you get a full family view. So if you are in law enforcement, if you are a family therapist, or if you are a religious leader, if you're a political leader and you're looking for legislation around this, and you want to see the real impact, because as you know, my story is not a People magazine article. It's not that. It's the real deal. But you can learn really what takes place and the impact on a family. And so I'm really really proud that we have created this together.
I'm curious what I mean. You talk about like legislation in a sense, but what could be done about this on a broader scale if it was to be like a bigger social issue?
Well, let me give you a couple of examples that are actually happening today. More and more we hear church leaders being accused and ultimately shown and being exposed for sexual abuse with children. What does the church immediately do in most cases? They cover it up.
Transfer them out.
Yeah, well, they rarely transfer them out because that would look bad for the church, but they cover up the crime, or they try to create some
Yeah.
sort of award system. Let me give you some money. Let me give you this. They cover it up. The same thing happens in our political space, in our political conversation. When something like this comes out, the cover up takes place. And so the perpetrator is able to get away with it, but the victims and their family, which the impact goes far beyond the immediate victim, they're left with nothing. And so, from a legislation standpoint, we have to stop tiptoeing around this issue. But when you've got people who are aware of things like this that have happened, and they're in political office and they're trying to protect themselves or protect people who may have donated to their campaign or something, and we see all the time those issues take precedence over the issues of their constituents. This is what we get. We need strong leadership on this sexual abuse and child sexual abuse, to where people say the children are really the most important thing. They are our future. Let's act like it.
Has any first president or woman ever run like as that being her main issue before? I don't know if that's
I don't think so.
a
I've
relevant
never
question.
heard. No, I don't. I don't think so. We've obviously had, presidents, getting busted every now and then. We have one that we're dealing with where we have Bill Clinton who had his thing, with say Monica Lewinsky. History tells us that they're not the first ones to do these things, but has anyone run on it as part of a platform issue? No. The topic is too combustible.
Wow. What other topics are like that? Like equally don't get enough treatment, but just as serious.
Well, imagine at the average Thanksgiving dinner, you've got a lot of family there. What are the things you do not talk about? There's some
Oh, okay.
hands-off things. You don't talk about
Yeah,
politics. You
yeah.
don't talk about religion. You don't do that. You don't talk about who's having an affair, even though every now and then those conversations take place. But this child sexual abuse will never come out of anyone's mouth. It does not happen. People are so afraid. Now, I'm a speaker for RAIN. RAIN is the largest sexual abuse incest organization in the country, and I'm a RAIN speaker. So from time to time, I go out and
Can
do things for them.
you talk about it a little bit? Just background briefly.
RAIN is the Rape, Incest, and Sexual Abuse Network. They are the largest sexual abuse network in the United States. They are the ones that the FBI is in partnership when it comes to sexual abuse and law enforcement. And I was given the opportunity to be a part of their speakers bureau. And we go around and we speak at different events. Could be schools, could be church, could be civic organizations. And oftentimes there are organizations that want speakers to come in and talk about our specific topic, and they will invite us in as well to talk about it. Um, with that said,
And just
yeah, please.
also, if for anyone that may be looking for help or can't speak about it, just some advice on how they can reach out to somebody. I know we didn't
Yeah,
preface that at the beginning.
sure. There are plenty of resources online. They're just everywhere now. Uh, they're family therapy, independent therapy. There's nothing really like a 12-step program out there. In fact, there's certainly that involves men. But those are the best resources. Something like RAIN, their resources are amazing, but they still don't even address the needs of brothers. When I bring it up, they think, "Oh, wow, we never even thought about
Hmm.
that till you brought it up." So it's organizations like RAIN that are your best bet for resources. And as it relates to just men in general, there's an absolutely fantastic online resource called One in Six, the number one in six, because that indicates that one out of every sexual abuse victim is a man or a boy. Most people don't realize that almost 20%, because women control the narrative on this, but almost one in six. So there are
Damn.
some staggering numbers. In the United States, every day, there are 160
And then
children, yeah, that are sexually abused.
we'll go full circle here back into it, but just
Sure.
briefly also go into how your book is different in this aspect of what people can learn and how that educates.
How it is different is you get the perspective of a brother, what we are dealing with emotionally, because when we are not allowed to speak, we have to carry all of this burden by ourselves. Part of the challenge is brothers are not invited into the conversation, but then we're expected to answer for our non participation. Those two things should
Ugh.
not exist in the same space, but they do. And so
Wow, that's hard.
my book highlights what brothers go through because no one wants to talk about it. And that is the biggest difference. It is the first book of its kind. It gives sisters an opportunity to look at what their brother is potentially dealing with when you say you can't talk about it. I don't want you coming to me with it. but we're carrying it. We have nowhere to go. So that's the difference with my book. It has never been presented this way from a brother's perspective. It allows sisters and brothers to connect. I've had so many people, especially women, call me. I had no idea. I had no idea this is what my brother was dealing with. There was an event when I had gone to that Lisa Nichols thing. I was called up to talk about a book, and this book spilled out. Not the network marketing book. When I was done, Joe, I went back to my seat and I was swarmed by women. And I had no idea this is what my brother was dealing with. I went on to the hall because it was so much, but the double doors burst open and more women surrounded me. What happened were three separate women on three separate occasions in the hall came to me and said, I should have talked to my brother. I knew he was carrying stuff, but I should have let him talk to me. But because I didn't, and the burden was so heavy, his guilt was so heavy, he took his life over this. So that's how bad it can be for brothers. When I was writing Helplessness, and I had gone into a really dark place while writing it, I could not believe I'm writing what I did, and I started spiraling down. There was a moment when I wanted out because I'm reliving, what I did and didn't do. But I know it's for a good reason. I know it's for a good cause. But the pain of reliving it, I knew I was going to come through on the back end. It was very therapeutic for me to write this. And I talk about it, multiple podcasts, almost a podcast every day. And I am just stronger and stronger because I'm talking about it.
Yeah, I had a question about art because you said something. I'll come up later, but yeah, the writing aspect. But when you spoke earlier about crying and finally having approval, would you describe that as like a breakthrough moment in the healing journey, or do you have
It
another one that comes
was
to mind?
the breakthrough moment when my sister said, of course you should write it. All you boys should write it. That was the moment, without
Damn.
question. I was talking to her yesterday and telling her about it again, and she says she had a hard time listening to me tell her what she did for me. But we are so close now. It's like nothing ever happened. But that was the breakthrough
Was that
moment.
this? Is that the sister you were? I interrupted you earlier. You were going to say that you had called another one.
Oh, no, no. This was the sister out in front of the garage. The other breakthrough was a couple of days later. I knew I had to call my older sister, the one who said, you can't talk about it. Didn't happen to you. I knew I was going to have to make that call. So I pick up the phone. Thing weighs 2,000 pounds. It is 2,000 pounds of fear, anxiety, fear,
Oh my god.
betrayal. It is guilt. It is shock. It is heavy. I put it back down. Pick up my cell phone again, put it back down. Pick it up a third time. Oh, you know what? I have something more important to do. I need to go sweep the floor.
Damn, I
I
relate
need to
so
go watch,
hard.
yeah, I need to go watch some paint dry on the fence. I really need to make sure it dries properly. It was like that. I
You're
I
like
I, I was
anything,
scared. Anything but this call.
anything.
It wasn't until the next day when I said, get your shit together. You must make this call. You cannot do this. She cannot be caught off guard. So I pick up the phone and I call her and I said, I got to talk to you about something. And she said, oh, okay. I'm going to write a book about a brother's perspective on what we go through. Silence. She didn't say a word. And I just wanted you to know that I'm writing this because I think our family story can help people. Silence. I'm thinking she's getting mad. She's about to blow up. I could feel it coming through the phone. So I was just wanting to let you know. So if there's something you want to say now, you obviously could say, whatever you need to say. I'm going to take whatever you have. And I also think it could be good for everyone if you contributed a section to the book so they can see what my sisters were dealing with. Silence. I knew that was the kicker. There was no way. And I'm waiting. And then she finally says, okay, all right. Wait, what did you say? Okay, all right. But you're the one who said you did not want us talking about it. We have honored you. You four girls. We have done it. Okay, yeah, I think you should write it. Again, to your question earlier, do I wish I had done that earlier? But I was so scared. I was so scared. My other brothers still will not talk to them. Well, I ended up doing a podcast with my older brother and one of my youngest twins a couple of years ago. And it was the first time the three of us had ever talked about it. It's on my website, 60-part web podcast. But it's the first time that we talked about it. And I said, look, you come at us however you need to come at us. We're just going to take it because we know you need to say things to us. And know that this is all about love. This is all about healing. This is all about people seeing that they can go through what we went through and ultimately end in a conversation like we're about to have that is just absolutely beautiful. It was 2 hours. It was hard. It was beautiful. It was
You,
it was amazing.
not to get too glib on you here, but how often does the story really end like this?
My story
Yeah, where it's just
with
you
with other
find
people,
you find yeah, but that
it
you
doesn't.
can find an
It doesn't.
answer and damn.
It doesn't because people are usually afraid to take the first step, which is the most important step, especially men. Being vulnerable is not our strong suit typically. I mean, we're pretty bad at it. Women have that on lock. I mean, they will talk to each other, they will spill their guts to each other, and it's so healing for them when they do so. But brothers, no, that's not what we do. Guys, it's just, nah, that's gonna make me look weak, bro. It's not gonna happen. So we don't take the first step, which is admitting we are traumatized, we are in pain. Once we do that, we can begin to move forward. And then, as I said, we talked about the whole DNA thing being part of you, you can't escape it. But then comes the next step, and it's the most terrifying step for a man to talk to another man about this, be it their own sexual abuse or being them with collateral damage. Now, I have been directly sexually abused, and I'm also collateral damage from my sisters. So I understand both sides very, very well, which is what allows me to speak to both men and women about it. But guys, it is not easy for us. We're used to being King Kong. I'm tough. I hunt. I gather. Me Tarzan. That kind of thing. And a lot of that is a societal construct because men are dominating many aspects of business and just the world in general. So we want to show we're always tough. And another part of it is us accepting that as our reality when we know in fact that that's not the case. We have to be willing to be vulnerable with ourselves before we can be vulnerable with someone else. Then it starts to happen. Shackles fall away.
How do you balance the need for personal healing with the desire to help others?
Me personally,
Yeah.
mine, they are one and the same. They are the same thing.
Nice. It's a good answer. That means helping others provides you your own healing and value.
I've realized that when I was writing the book. I'm like, this is what it's about. being so incredibly vulnerable about every single mistake I made, and I made mistakes. I told you about the wedding. You know, if I can do that, be that vulnerable, it helps me because I know it's helping someone else understand that what they're going through is normal. Oh, I'm not alone. So it's one and the same. Helping me and helping others, they are inextricably linked. They are not separate in any way. They're the same thing.
Also, in terms of stats, isn't America like the highest in terms of whether it's trafficking or abuse and in some of these numbers? Are you familiar with any of the stats?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We are reported. Let me put it that way. They have the highest
Oh
numbers.
man.
And that's
Yeah.
the key phrase. Reported in America, just on child sexual abuse. And we just kind of talked about this just for a second. Every day in America, 160 unique children are sexually abused. Every day. So yesterday, 160 kids went to school, played hopscotch, got on the monkey bars, went home, watched a little TV, hung out with their parents or whomever, went to bed. And somewhere around 11 or 12 o'clock, like with my sister, someone opened their door. Every day. It happens in America. It happened yesterday. It will happen tonight. And it will happen tomorrow, like clockwork, every single day. And in America, of the people that molest children, 70% are people that you know. They're your parents, they're clergy, they're your teachers. They are people who know you intimately every day. It is rarely the stranger. Even though we tell our children, don't talk to strangers because they're going to do this to you. It is not them who are usually doing it. It is people that you know.
Horrible. And
Yeah.
trust.
And trust
Wow,
and believe.
that's
Absolutely.
horrible. What psychological theories or philosophies have influenced your understanding of trauma?
Wow, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question. Huh. I've never been asked that question. Psychological theories.
Or
I
philosophies?
my philosophy is a pretty basic one. And I think it's the same philosophy that we all use as a foundation. Treat others the way you want to be treated. If I don't want to be treated like that, why would I treat someone else like that? It is so simple. That
Yeah.
is my basic philosophy. I
It's
really don't
like,
need
I'm not
all the
touching
rest.
you.
Yeah, to me, everything else beyond that is just commentary. It could be flowery, it could be more clinical, but it all comes
I
back to the
see.
same thing. Do you like the way that feels? No? Then don't do it to someone else. It's that simple. That is my basic philosophy with life.
Like it. How do you deal with setbacks or relapses in your healing process? Does that even
Because
happen?
you will be triggered. Absolutely. I get flashbacks all the time.
Wow.
And like I said, it could be a song, it could be a commercial, it could be a
What
movie.
specifically though? Because you say flashbacks, are we saying like the moments of helplessness that you could have done something, or just the time period in your life?
No, it's a moment of helplessness. My biggest flashbacks are knowing what I believed my family to be and then learning that it wasn't. Learning that we're on stage singing and everything is great. But then I learned from my sisters later that immediately after the show, my stepfather is trying to molest them. How could I miss it? You know? So because I'm a brother, I imagine what's going on. And if I'm triggered, if something causes a flashback, then that's what I get. There are specific songs that get me. And the song that gets me the most It's Gladys Knight and the Pips, Midnight Train to Georgia. And it's the line going back to a simpler time, a simpler space and time.
Wow.
And that's at our house. We're singing on stage. We're at a picnic. I just want to go back there. And I could be driving. Joe, I have to pull over every time and just let the tears go. Because I see my little sisters in their ponytails, their little blue and white flower dresses. And I know what we had. And I know there was 40 years that went by that we lost it all. And so how do I deal with it? To your question is, I do the best I can. I do the best I can. I may
Can I,
call a sister and say how, and just ask how they're doing to help settle me down. Yeah,
can I make a small little joke here?
absolutely.
Did you ever consider going solo as the solution?
Solo in what sense?
In music, you're just like, I'm gonna
No,
sing
no,
it, and
no,
I'm gonna be the Timberlake of my group, the
no,
Jackson of
no,
my
no, no,
group.
no. My brothers and sisters were much better singers than I was. I was good, and I was
Mhm.
a really good entertainer. But my brothers and sisters, let's see, they're Mariah Carey level singers.
Oh, whoa.
They are Marvin Gaye level singers. They're making runs. They're
Damn.
doing here. They're going there. It was all day. I did not have that ability. So going solo. No, they could do that.
So, so
Stay in
you
my
were the
lane, bro.
super the super supportive backbone in a sense too, huh?
Well, we all sang lead. You know, we all did. But I just did not have their singing ability. I just couldn't go to this note just because I want to go there. They just, oh, I'm going to go up there. Oh, I'm going to do it like, and then land right there. No, that was there.
Damn.
So I stayed in my lane. My singing, I would say, compared to them, was pretty pedestrian. But it was an amazing 25 years, and I loved drumming and doing all of that. But so no. You know what? It's
Dude.
funny. I tell them my solo career is right now.
That's
My
good.
solo
That is
career.
so
You
good.
guys got to be the superstars and the people that all I tell my brothers, the people that all the girls went after. I was always what was left over. And so, but now
Wow.
I'm in my solo career, and my solo career is dedicated to helping other families and brothers and sisters. So,
Can
yeah,
can you still play drums, by the way?
it would take me a minute to get behind it. My wife's cousin, speaking of drums, my wife has a couple of Grammy award winning cousins. The drummer for Alice Cooper is my wife's cousin, Glenn Sobel.
Oh, wow.
And uh, Glenn is really cool, and he has won fastest hands in the world. No, I'm not his double drummer. So and then she has another brother, another cousin who's won Grammys for engineering and producing, and so we're just surrounded. My family and her family were just entertainers and people who are skilled with that sort of with that sort of talent.
Yeah, I was just wondering how come you didn't continue to capitalize somehow on those talents, even if you were like, well, I'll produce this one brother or sister of mine and push them or something.
No, I never thought of that. I always encouraged them to keep going, but I didn't think of it like that. Like I said, my mission became this. My mission became
And
how do I help families, and ultimately, how do I let my sisters know I'm completing the mission? I'm not dropping the
mm,
ball. So my mission has another 30, 40 years to go if I'm lucky. I'm not dropping the ball.
how has your trauma influenced your relationships with others?
It has made me more tolerant. It has made me more understanding. I tend to give people more room because I know that they are could potentially at any moment be going through something, and where they may say something that's off the mark or kind of weird, uh, my first response is just, it's interesting. Maybe they're going through something. My older brother has a saying, especially when it comes to women. The majority of women that have been sexually abused throughout history, there's no way that you can count it. And his saying is this: every man should just assume that every woman that he meets has been sexually abused. Just assume it.
Damn.
Just assume that's the case. Because if it's not them, they know someone. And if you start from there with every woman that you know, you will be more tolerant, you will be more understanding, you will be more compassionate, because you don't know what they're going through, and they may be carrying something really, really dark. And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I have ever
That
heard
is.
given to a
I
man.
agree.
Just assume, no matter what their age is. Like my sisters, my stepfather went on them and started
And
molesting them when they were 5 and 6.
I think it's worth reiterating that that's for your own thought process, not to victimize the other person, right? Like that's so
Right.
we can treat you with more respect. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Crazy. That's a
go
really
there.
good quote.
Yeah. Because the level and how it affects our relationship with women, like I said, we become more tolerant, we become more understanding, we learn more about us. We learn that I may say something that's completely off base. I'm not going to say that because I don't know.
And then we can dispel the stereotypes at the same time. Any
Mm-hmm.
stigmas, right?
Yeah, and it will bring women closer to us. They're just not going to open up to a man.
and
It's just not going to happen.
and then they'll stop choosing the bear.
Certainly hope so. Certainly hope so.
How can you discuss the role of forgiveness in your healing process? I know that one is probably very cliche to a lot of people, but is it that important?
Well, it's funny that you would ask that because I'm asked about forgiveness all the time. I am not one to just automatically forgive because I think forgiveness is very tricky. I think we're told you need to forgive someone because it's eating you. That's not necessarily true. And for me, it's not
Hmm.
eating me. I think forgiveness is only valuable when the person that you are forgiven or forgiving has shown remorse. If they have not shown remorse, if they have not made an attempt to say they're sorry, why are you forgiving them for something that they know they need to address? I'm not
And
going
they
to
mean it,
forgive.
right?
Yeah, they don't mean it. People do it a lot on their deathbed, too late. Now you want me to, you're doing that for you on your way out the door. I don't think so. You take the time. So I'm not going to feel bad if I haven't forgiven you because I'm doing just fine without it. You need to address it. It's like with my mother. I told my sisters, I said, unless she says something, she's going to go her way, I'm going to go my way. But when she passes away, understand that I'm only going to the funeral to support you guys, period. Because she's not shown remorse. My mother once told me it is not my job to help you kids overcome what has happened to you. I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
That's cold.
Yeah.
That's
And so
cold.
they're, how do you just say, I'm going to forgive you for that? Like I said, forgiveness is not, it needs to be earned with me. I just don't give it up. It needs to be earned.
But that also isn't to say that doesn't mean you don't love the person, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of that, I said for children, we're often say, but you love your parents. I'm like, you know what? The relationship between you and your parents is that they are your parents. Love, is an earned process. You have to earn it from your children. The children may not like you, they may not love you, but they recognize you are their parent. In my book, I talk about what's the percentage? What's the percentage for a child when you determine that what your parents have done is really bad? Is it 50-50? Is it 60% good, 40% bad? 70-30, 80-20, 90-10, 99-1? Can they do something 99% great and 1% be bad and things be absolutely horrible between them? And my answer is yes. That 1% can easily overshadow the 99% depending on what the 1% is. If they have sexually abused their children, that 1% will overshadow that 99% any day of the week because that's the most heinous thing you could do to your child. So it depends.
Damn, that was dark, but I mean that's real.
It's real.
How do you how do you navigate the complexities of trust after you experience trauma?
Uh, that is a very good point because the trust has been eroded. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
The trust between a child and a parent, which is always complex. The relationship between brothers and sisters are just as complex. And for us, there's the erosion of the family unit. There's that loss. There's the erosion of what I thought my mother was. Definitely what my stepfather, even though he was not at the same level as my mother by any stretch. There's the loss of trust between a brother and their sister, which is what I did. And I caused this erosion multiple times and in multiple levels. The coming back, how do you get back there? Time has a way of bringing perspective. Time has a way as you get older and you
So
experience
true.
things,
So
yeah,
true.
you evolve. You evolve because you experience more things, you experience more people, you experience more situations, and you see how things in relationships shift all the time. Things evolve even in your marriage. Things evolve with you and your partner. One day you might be here together, tomorrow you might be over here, and that's just an evolution. They may grow at a faster pace than you are, and you're trying to balance it out, and but that's just time. And so, because time has a way of evolving, it brings a different viewpoint. So, for me and my sisters and my brothers, we began to understand what is most important to us. Is it being angry? Is it being on the outs? Or is it reconnecting? Remembering how much fun we have had together over the year. So, my second sister, who wrote, brother, who I went to outside the garage, she created something that really brought us together. She created this thing called Soul Food Sunday on a Saturday. We've been doing it for years. We all get together, we cook soul food, right? On a Saturday, rather on a
I'm
Sunday.
sold. I'm already
And
sold.
yeah, the rest of the time is we are doing skits from our favorite movies, TV shows, commercials. So where we had the situation where we weren't talking, we are now eating together, skits. People are trying to become the best actor of the day, best actress, and it has just brought us together. We're there all day together. I have won.
Hilarious.
I will do a skit. I don't care who it is. I don't care what it's about. So I have won Best Actor award. I have won Best Female Actor award, and I won Best Ensemble Cast award.
The
I'm the only.
funniest part is because the funniest part is like it's your own family. Like who else would you want
Yeah,
that award amongst, right? Like
but it brings family and friends. It brings extended family and friends. So my sister, as I said, she said, it's your story. You need to tell your story. She wanted to figure out a way to bring us closer, and this is the type of thing that she did. And this is what you do. You figure out a way to bring your family together. It could be family gatherings, especially around food. What family cannot find a way to get together around food in the kitchen? You know, kitchen's
Mhm.
a sacred place.
True.
It's just not a place for cooking. It is a place of love. It is a place of conversation. It is a place of just depth of emotion. And there's not a more sacred place to me in the house than the kitchen. I mean,
I'm sure
stuff gets
it
discussed
tastes
in the
better just
kitchen. Yeah,
yeah, just because who's making it, it tastes better for sure.
yeah. Stuff gets discussed in the kitchen. Ugly, beautiful gets discussed in the kitchen.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask about was we didn't really touch too much on how big of a father figure your stepfather was or your real father. Can you go into detail on any of that?
Yeah, my biological father was an absolute mess, Joe. He would beat the crap out of my mom. And as a little boy, I watched it almost daily. And he
Whoa.
was an alcoholic. He ended up dying of a cocaine heroin overdose. My mother had, when we lived in Portland at the time, this was around 1966, she had had enough. And so she got together with my aunt and they put all 8 of us kids in my aunt's convertible while my dad was away and drove us down to California to get away from him. And I never saw him again
Wow.
because she wanted to get out of that environment. But she jumped from the fire into the frying pan. But my stepdad, who did all this heinous stuff. So my real father figure showed up in the form of my white Jewish father-in-law.
Nice.
He grew up in New York. I grew up in California. He grew up, middle class. He grew up, I didn't. Our paths were so different, but we became really close. And I like to say when I'm talking about this, the book Helplessness and what it involves crosses race, it crosses religion, it crosses politics, it crosses wealth, it crosses social economics, it crosses borders, it crosses waters. It is a global epidemic, child sexual abuse. And my father-in-law, who passed away a few years ago, just to tell you how this crosses borders, he bought my book, or rather, I gave him a copy of it, and I knew he wasn't going to read it. Uh, just he knows that it's a heavy topic. He knows a little bit about what happened, but I knew I wasn't going to read it. So one day, Joe, he calls me and he says, "I want you to come to the house. I want to talk to you." Okay,
So you took your bat.
bruh. Not, no, no. Uh, but I did put a protective bubble around me. Let me put it that way. But no. You know, he was the kind of father I always wanted to be, and he did not have any sons. So me and my 2 brother-in-laws, we were his sons, and I'm his only, black son. The others were one is white Jewish, the other is white Greek, and Christian. So I go to the house, and I notice my mother-in-law is not there, and she's always there, but she wasn't there. So I see at the dining room table where he's sitting is my book, and he says, "I want to talk to you about your book." Okay, sure, Dad. Now I've always wanted to call my father-in-law Dad. I don't care who he was. I
yo,
made that
yo,
decision
but
when I was a
how's
kid.
it feel? But how's it feel? Are you in shock right now? Are you like, oh shit?
Total shock. You want to talk to me about my book?
But
Okay,
you're playing it cool, right?
you
Keeping
know
it
I
cool.
am. You know I am. But I am stunned. He says, "I read your book." Okay, I'm waiting for it. He said, "I want to tell you something. I want to tell you that I understand what you're going through." What? "I want you to know I understand everything you wrote in your book. I'm going to tell you something I've only told my wife, your mother-in-law. You cannot tell anyone this story until I pass away." Now, he's about 95. Okay. When I was in my early teens, we lived in an apartment that had 2 stories. We were downstairs, and our really good family friends were upstairs. We were so close as families, we kept our front doors open. We always went in and out. Everyone was just that friendly. One day I went upstairs to get my sister, my older sister. Went in, and I heard a sound coming from out of the bedroom. And I opened the door. And the father was molesting my sisters.
Damn.
He was molesting my sister. And I stood in the door and I just looked. I turned around and walked out, and I did not tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't talk to my sister. She saw me in the door, but we never talked about it. A couple of months later, it happened again. And I didn't tell anybody. I want you to know I understand. And he starts to cry a little bit. So here you've got this 95-year-old man, my father-in-law, talking to his black son-in-law, who grew up 180 degrees from him. East Coast, West Coast, black, white,
Yep.
Jewish, grew up Baptist. Well off, he's now very successful. I'm nothing like him. But we connected on this, of all things. It crossed race, it crossed religion, it crossed politics, it crossed wealth. We are now in the same place. I could not believe it. He's 95 years old and he wants to unburden himself with this. He's
Damn.
carrying this pain for almost 75 years. And he wants to tell me, because of my book, I understand. You cannot tell people until after I lie, until after I pass away. And therein lies the stigma. Because if I tell people about it while he's alive, even his 90 and 95-year-old friends are going to come and ask him about it. His daughters are going to ask him about it. His nieces and nephews are going to ask him about it. How come you didn't? He did not want that. And so from the stigma and the pain and the guilt and the crisis, we carry this stuff as brothers forever. And that moment just told me how big this really is.
The broader issue of it being bigger than yourself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Damn. Wow. I wouldn't have got that answer if I didn't ask about your stepfather and your. That's crazy. That's such detail.
Yeah.
What role does self-compassion play in all of this, in the healing aspect?
Self-compassion from the standpoint of self-love and compassion for myself.
Yeah,
Oh,
healing.
oh, our previous house that we lived in, I was having difficulty with this, knowing that I made mistakes. And it's a day that I'm having a hard time. I'm hearing songs that are reminding me of what my sisters went through. And it was a day that I was having a really hard time emotionally. And I said, oh, okay, look, you're a good guy. I went into the bathroom, and this is self compassion. And I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself and said, you're a good guy. You're a really good guy. You like to have fun. You will tease people because you like to see people, that's just what you do. You like to tease people, have a good time. But you're a good guy. Know that. It's okay. That conversation with myself was free. That was me being compassionate to me. That was me giving me what I need, which was permission to accept every good and bad that I did with this, but that I could still be a good man. that I could still be a good brother and that I am those things. So self-compassion.
Yeah, a little reminder to yourself. That's a good one. What
Mm-hmm.
about how's your view of resilience changed over the years?
Dude, I used to think I was not a very strong person, even though I would, like I said earlier, I would go get a job as a kid. I was the son that handled stuff, and those are victories. There's no question about it. Those are triumphs as a kid. But after learning what happened to my sisters, my view of me was really horrible, and it should have been. And then in the subsequent days and years that went by, it was really horrible. So my resilience about me and what I was about was not really good. But as I started to accept it and then started talking about it, and then again talking to my sister about what I was going to do, I realized because if I can handle that, and then if I could handle what happened in the hallway in 1986 with him, if I can handle what happened in the church a few years ago, I am a strong man. I am a strong person. So my view of my resilience is very few, if anything, is going to be worse than that. So I can handle just about anything. I am strong. I have been put through a number of tests, and I recognize that I come through it. There is a quote that I think is really good. Anyone walking today, everything that happened to you in the past. I think this is from Les Brown, the amazing speaker, or it may have been him, or maybe even Steve Harvey. Yes, it's just Steve Harvey. Everything that happened to you in the past, if you are still here today, you are batting 1,000 because you are still here. You are still here. All the crap that happened to you, do you know you have come through it? You have survived it. You are batting 1,000. And it's like, oh, he is absolutely correct. So, Joe, anything you have endured in your past, anything you've had to survive, you are still here today. So you are batting 1,000 because you have overcome it. You've championed through. I've championed through. Anyone listening to this who is still here, in spite of everything, you've championed through.
Damn. What about some common misconceptions about trauma that you may have encountered?
I think the most common misconception about trauma is you can handle it on your own. You can't. You just can't. It it's that
Yeah, I think
you putting
perspectives,
yourself.
right?
Yeah, it's you putting yourself in a mental health situation. You're isolated. You're the only logical feedback. You're in your own echo chamber. You're alone. So that's a misconception. You can handle it on your own. You cannot. You are dealing with an emotional health issue, and you need a community. Even if that community exists of one person, you need one person. You need people helping you through it. They don't always need to be
Getting
clinical,
into some,
but they need to be. You need to have someone.
what about like experiences with positively impacting other people from your book? Any great stories on the healing process?
For other people,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, a very good friend of mine who passed away recently read my book, and like my father-in-law, we are very different. He read Helplessness, and he called me. I need to talk to you about it. So there's obviously the one with my father-in-law that is, you know, a great story because he was able to unburden himself. But this friend calls me. I read your book, and I decided to call my sister immediately and tell her what happened to me with the pastor in our church when I was a little boy. Because your
Damn.
book gave me the courage that if you can be vulnerable like you are being and share with me in the world, I can talk to my sister about what happened. Up until me telling you I'm going to call my sister and tell her what happened, I had never even told anyone. You're the first person that I told. Just by saying I'm going to tell my sister, my pastor molested me. So he said, we spoke for 2.5 hours. That is a victory.
Dang.
And that is bringing
Whoa.
that's not only helping him, but it's bringing him and his sister closer together before he passed away. A really great actor, very well known actor, and so we have those. I have women who call. This one woman called and said, "You know what? You're part of the team." I was like, "What team?" She said, "You are part of the women's team." She said, "My husband could never say or write what you've written, but you understand. You understand what women are going through, and not only women, but you understand what brothers. You are part of the team." And I've had others say this needs to be reading for, as we mentioned earlier, law enforcement. I think teachers need to read this. Family therapists need to read this because you give such a view on this, and then to have your sisters and brothers contribute to it. I've never seen anything like this. So, yeah, there are many stories out there like that.
Curious how much a therapist can really do if they can't really relate to your story, though. Like, is it mainly about hearing you out and then saying, "This is the perspective. Is this how you felt?" Is that really what the job
Yeah,
would be?
yeah, we all start at the beginning. And the only way you can learn how to create support is knowing that the support is needed, and then you decide to do something about it. You can't just put
Ah,
your head in the sand and say, well, I've never heard of it like they did to me. The only way we get support is bringing those people in on the project, bringing people in. So ultimately, I was asked a couple of days ago, would I be interested in creating a nonprofit? I said, I it's my big dream is to create a nonprofit over this. I even have the name for it, the 100 Million Voices Project, because I believe there are at least 100 million people in the United States who are suffering from this type of abuse. So you
if you
have
need
to
any help,
create the
I
tools.
can I can point you in that direction because I got my own 501. So if you need help, just let me know
Well, I will probably be giving you a holler.
for sure.
But you've got to start. The way tools get created is people deciding to create tools and create systems to help. And the only way they know they need to be created is someone like me saying, I need help. You need to create something for me. So uh, that's how you get that kind of support going.
Is there pushback to get your kind of subject matter into schools? Is that
All
hard?
day long, all day.
Wow.
But let me give you another story. Teachers don't want to deal with it. There's a local grocery store a mile and a half from us. And one day I was going into the grocery store. It's a pavilions, they're like ponds and right, something like that. Yeah, it's a big pond street. And as I'm going in, there are
Mhm.
6 high school kids outside with a table selling baked goods to raise money for a school project. I usually stop because I love giving money to kids who are trying to do something. I know what that's like. So I asked them, so what's your school project? And they said, we are doing a documentary on child sexual abuse in the home. I said, what? You're
Roll the
doing,
window down.
yeah. They said, yes, we're doing this project. We were given 6 topics and we chose this one. And when we told our teacher this is what we were going to do, our teacher said, no, you cannot do that topic. They said, well, you said we could do whatever we wanted. These are the 6 that we came up with, and we're doing this one. And the school said, you cannot do that. You cannot do that topic. These are high schoolers. And the school is so afraid of this topic. So I asked, why did you choose that topic? They come from a predominantly white, affluent high school, one of the most affluent high schools in my area. there's nothing but money pouring out of it and going in. They said because so many of our friends have been sexually abused by their parents in the home. So we're going to do something about it.
Damn.
I was taken aback because here,
So it has nothing to do with socioeconomic status, is what you're getting at.
nothing. But it does speak to, as well, the need that it be spoken about, that it be
Correct.
raised. Because now you got high schoolers saying, okay, the adults aren't going to do it. We're going to do it on our own because we're the one being impacted negatively.
Damn. Jeez. I don't even know what that issue is. I'm like, do we need younger people in charge of themselves too? Like, that's horrible that you
We
can't
need younger
even know
people
what
in
they
charge
need.
of everything, especially today because younger people have such a much broader perspective. They're much more dialed in globally. They're a lot more tolerant of just change. They're a lot more tolerant and accepting of their friends and the dynamics and the diversity. And whereas my generation is still having a lot of challenges with it, but it'll be the next generation and the generation after that that really breaks down those barriers and cracks and bust through those foundations. Yeah, we need more young
That's
people.
pretty scary because it does make me wonder, like, can you imagine that there's kids that don't want to go home for this reason?
Yeah, my sisters.
I've, I never
Yeah,
considered that. Like,
yeah.
your safest place and you don't want to be there.
You don't want to be there. You don't want to be there. That
Wow.
was my sisters for years. So it's not hard for me to
This
imagine this
this next
reality.
this next question, I'm real curious. You can take your time on this one. How has your understanding of human nature been shaped by your experiences?
I think in general, human nature is a forgiving nature. We typically are willing to accept people for who they are. It's when our those people who have a tremendous amount of influence begin to really reshape the natural essence of who we are, which is, to me, we are compassion, we are love, we are spiritual beings, and we want to accept people and be a part of
Naturally.
be a part of the human existence. But it's when influences become so heavy that changes our shape and our view of who we are. It ultimately changes our basic nature of who we want to be. Because one of the things I know just from this, be it man, woman, boy, or child, we all want the same things. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. That we all want to move forward in a positive way and be a positive impact on society. I know that's who we are and what we want to be. But it's when outside forces start to come in and reshape that, it could be very difficult. But human nature to me is people want to be happy. They want to be treated and treat people the same way. And so that's just my view
But
of basic
also,
human nature.
how much of human nature is your ego in there too, though, you know?
But where does the ego typically come from? We normally just are born with this tremendous ego. It is to me, it is a learned thing. We learn how to
That's a good
hold
point.
on. We learn how to not share. Those are ego-driven instances.
Or
And as you
or
get
to
old,
not get offended, right?
yeah, those are learned tendencies, and that's where egos can start to get out of hand when that becomes more important to you than your compassionate, tolerant, understanding self.
Would you say that you had to dissolve yours at a very early age?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I was the drummer. My other brothers and sisters are a lot better singers. So my ego had to be tamped down.
Wow, that came out of nowhere, but that's hilarious. Wow, they get the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
flack in the band.
Yeah.
That's
My brothers were
hilarious.
getting all kind of play. Me is like, okay, one day. But so I know that's not where you were leaning, but hey, I had to
That's
knock that
funny
one out of
though.
the park.
That's
Uh,
that's a good one. Uh, how do you incorporate mindfulness or meditation into your healing process?
I wake up every morning, and I am listening to something positive every day. I am pouring into me every day. My wife does the same thing. My children do the same thing. It is critical because even after listening to stuff and reading stuff that's all about self development and self growth, those that emotion will stay with you for only so long. That high will only last for so long. And then you get into the rest of the day and you start dealing with the natural trials and tribulations of the day, of the world, of relationships, and navigating all that stuff. And it can easily bring you down. So I think it's important that you have a mindfulness about you. And part of the mindfulness, the best thing you can do is recognize you need to pour positivity into you as often as you can. And positivity could be great music that just lifts you up. It could be a great movie. It could be just going to the park. It could just be hanging out with your friends and everything is just
Self-talk.
chill. Yeah, and there's no pressure there. So mindfulness and that kind of uplifting yourself can take on many forms, but it has to be something that you actively pursue. You cannot let it come to you. You have to pursue it every day with purpose, on purpose. You're seeking a specific result, and that is to make you better than you were yesterday.
I think that last one is what everyone's missing, no? For the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people are. Yeah.
And touching on that a little bit more, what role does creativity play in your recovery? You can go as much into detail on that one as you want.
I think the role of creativity is the one that allows for the self expression and allows for the reduction of the ego. Because creativity is something that you can only get from within. And and this is also part of the mindfulness, if you are able to
Wow.
go within, yeah,
No, I was going to say that's not very obvious what you just said. That creativity is all within, right?
creativity is all within. It's not external. We may get some inspiration externally. We may experience I guess just inspiration that takes many forms. But in order for you to be creative, after that requires that you go within yourself. And part of the most powerful thing you can do with creativity is set aside your ego and give yourself permission to do whatever it is you need to do. Without creativity, not much gets done because if you are in a negative place, you have to be creative in the ways that takes you to get out of it. So one of the thing that became my creative outlet was the thing I thought I would absolutely never do in my life, and that was write a book. But that was a creative process.
Damn.
It was therapeutic. It was free. It was liberating. And yet, like the creative process, there were many, many dark days, and there were days when I wanted to quit because I just wasn't getting there quick enough. I wasn't getting the outcome that I was looking for. I'm going to tear up the paper, start all over. I'm going to get rid of the
You
canvas.
weren't
It's
ever like
ugly. Hmm?
you weren't ever like a masochist, like writing your feelings out of pain, were you?
I think there's a degree of that. If you're going to answer honestly, yeah. I never thought
Wow.
about I never thought about it until you brought it up, but I think so. I think that's a part of it. But like everything else, there's balance. You know,
For
that
sure.
doesn't that
It's
doesn't
not
mean you
like the whole book is like that, right?
right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know that you're going to go through some pain, and for me, I knew I needed to go through some pain, particularly when I'm writing about my sisters. I knew it. And I
It's
knew in
heavy.
order for me to get to my sisters in the way I wanted to, the pain was unavoidable. So just go through it. And I knew once we eventually started talking about the book, that was going to be another pain, you know, masochistic thing that I knew I had to put myself into. but I knew I had to go through it.
Are,
So it's okay.
are, are there any specific books or resources that have been most helpful for you? Because, I mean, you said there aren't any available. So how did you find inspiration?
I found it within. I just, I,
Damn.
I made a choice. Everything's about choice. You can either choose to stay, red pill, blue pill kind of thing, the Matrix, go down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole or stay up here and not, go down the rabbit hole to get to the truth, or take this pill and stay up here in fantasy land and just pretend everything's okay.
Shit.
No, mine was choice. I chose to go through what I needed to go through because I knew that was the only way out. I was willing to go through the pain. My relationship with my sisters was more important than anything else, and I'm going to go through it. So mine was within. I just chose.
Can you discuss a time when you felt truly understood by someone else?
I will go back. Well, there's obviously the biggest person was my sister outside the garage. I wasn't expecting that. She understood. And then my wife telling me that I was a victim. But then there was my 95-year-old father-in-law. It's it was like we were one. He understood me, and I wasn't expecting that. I never expected a conversation with him like that. And there he is saying, like I said, emotionally, I understand. I always wanted to be respected by him because I always liked him. He was just a great guy. He always just reminded me of the kind of father I never had but always wanted. Even though we had some things that weren't in common. And for him to call me over and share such an important, intimate detail about his life and tell me I understand, it didn't get any better than that. That was the ultimate moment of someone
Would you say
understanding me
that it was kind of like a synchronicity in that sense, like how the
without
universe comes
question.
full circle?
Yeah, without
Got you.
question. Because even with my sisters, it was the dynamic of the male female dynamic. Their understanding of what I was going through could only go so far. But when my father-in-law did it, it was synchronicity all day. We were symbiotic, basically. We were one. And it took our relationship, which was good, to an even greater level. It was just there was this change between us that made what was already good, it made it great. So yeah, he understood.
It's crazy because I think the deeper message here is also the power of art, to be honest.
In what way?
Like the healing power of art.
Oh, yeah, the healing power. Yes, yes, that creativity and what it can do. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, can literally heal, restore, inspire all sorts of
it's
different things.
restorative. It is definitely a restorative process if you choose to let it be. And you have to choose to go through whatever it is you have to go through, come hell or high water. There's no other way.
How has your experience with trauma shaped your view of the entire world?
Well, that's a good question because what we go through as a world can be incredibly challenging. What it has done is made me more tolerant of other cultures, other viewpoints. That's what it has done. It has allowed me to be more accepting of diversity. A good case in point is my son came to us my older son I have a son and a daughter. He's in his 30s, and he told me and my wife that he has decided that they are going to be non-binary. He's married, and that's what they want to do. And so, we going through the acceptance of the of changing pronouns. I think if I hadn't gone through that experience, it would have been much more difficult for me
That's a good point.
to deal with that. So we were like, cool, we were not backwards, because you're looking at your son at that, prior to that as, you know, uh, uh, being more of male energy. But now they're saying I don't want to be viewed as that. So my own experience of going through trauma and pain allowed me to say, it's okay. I understand. I just want you to be happy. Are you happy? And they were like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Is your wife happy? Yes. Okay. We just want you to be happy. We will deal and learn to, navigate our way through your change, but we're good with it.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I think a lot of people get stuck on just the change in itself when that's not even relevant, right? Your happiness is
No,
what really
yeah,
does
the
matter.
happiness is the point, and I have learned to be happy.
Wow. What about the role of physical health? How does that play in your overall healing?
I am a very physical guy. I love fitness, and my fitness is paramount to me. I do it every day, and in fact, I'm finishing up a fitness challenge right now. There's a guy, his name is Sean T. He created the fitness series called Insanity and things like this. And so I'm finishing up a program that he is doing. And because fitness is so important to me, because I have multiple compound scoliosis. My back was born deformed. I got 5 curves in my spine. And instead of being 6'1" like my super singing brothers, I'm 5'8". So I lose out there too. Uh, so, uh, so my fitness is something that I have to do, but I've learned that what the fitness is more mental than spiritual for me, rather than physical for me. It is something that keeps me young. It keeps me thriving. It doesn't keep my body in good shape, but it keeps me mentally sharp. It makes me more creative. So, from a healing standpoint, uh, just being physically fit and having that sort of attitude is another way of just being more tolerant and more accepting of people, because you realize not everyone's the same. Not everyone's going to get the same results. And so, I'm, yeah, being fit is really important to me.
I was going to ask how you navigate feelings of anger and frustration, if you still even, prompt those emotions, and then is working out the solution for that?
I still deal with those. I'm so much better at it because I'm a lot more calm. I'm a lot more just let me evaluate the situation first. But what the fitness has done, it allows me to release a lot of physical stress. I think a lot of the challenges that we go through are the origin is a physical stressor, and we don't know how to release them. And being fit allows you to do that, even if you're just going walking or running, or in my case, you're lifting weights or doing a combination of hybrid stuff. The fitness just releases a lot of that stress. So it is important.
That's important. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, because you're basically saying do
Do
something,
something.
anything.
Yeah, I don't care what it
Yeah.
is. Do something. And all too often, so many people sit back and they're not doing anything, not realizing that the repercussions of that are far reaching. You
Yeah,
know, fitness
I
allows you
agree.
to get rid of a lot of stress that you otherwise would not be experiencing. And you see yourself physically different, so you feel better. You feel more
Yeah,
energetic. You are energetic, and so your life begins to mirror a more energetic lifestyle.
Yeah, once the sun starts going down, if I haven't gotten out, I immediately start to time myself. I'm like, all right, I got to beat the sun. Got to get outside. Got to get outside.
Got to do it
But
every day.
yeah, a few more questions here. How do
Sure.
you set boundaries to protect your mental health?
How do I set down? I just, if you're not, if your energy, if I get a sense that your energy is not near mine, I bounce. I don't have time for it. That's my boundary. I don't have a lot of time for a lot of negative talk and people who spend a lot of their time there. That's not to say that I don't have my own self-negative talk, and I have people around me who may be going through things, but I will let it go so far before I say my boundary is I have reached my saturation point. I'm going to step over here and let you handle what you need to handle on your own because I really can't do it for you. You know what I think. You know how I think you should process it and how you can help yourself with it. So my boundaries are pretty much if things start to get a little too much, I will remove myself from the situation. I think you have to do that in order to protect your own self emotionally. So I do it. I may work
I
out.
think that's the whole you can guide a horse to water, can't make him drink kind of quote.
Yeah, you are correct. You can't, and you can spend time trying to get them to drink, but at some point you got to cut bait. You got to let them swim,
Find it,
sink or
find
swim
a
on
new
their own.
horse.
Absolutely, find a new horse, and there are plenty of people who will let you ride them and let you tell your story along the way. I'm not one of those.
That's a good point. What are some small daily practices that aid in your recovery? We talked about meditation, we talked about gym. Anything else? Music? Anything?
I am, like I said, the gym. I'm listening to music all the time. I am listening to self development all the time. I am. Uh, I like to have fun at other people's expense. if 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 I can if I can laugh and be sorry, I could be pretty sarcastic, and if I can say something to get you to react and just watch you do it, and then I will oftentimes say to you, "Thanks for playing." They're like, "This was a joke." I'm like, "Yeah, it was a joke. I just wanted to see it happen. So thank you for playing." My family doesn't like it when I do that, but I'm trying to find something funny. You know, I need to find something light. So that is how I go about my day. Like I said, you know, we all want to be seen and we want to be heard, but we also don't want to be bombarded with heavy all the time. You know, you need to get the comedy in there. You need to get just those moments alone with family and friends to just chill out, do something silly, unimportant. There's nothing attached to it. I'm just doing it just to do it.
Don't take life so serious, aka.
Don't take yourself so serious. You know, life becomes serious when you take yourself seriously. If you don't
Damn,
take
it's a
yourself so
better way to put
seriously
it.
and you give yourself permission to be you instead of giving yourself permission to be what someone else says you should be, it's very different. If you don't take yourself too seriously, life doesn't, it's not always serious. I'm not to say there isn't serious moments because they are, but they are less.
I know I tried to mention books earlier, but are there any like motivational speakers, people that inspired you growing up that you looked up to, role models or anything?
Uh, One of the biggest people that I like listening to is David Goggins.
Wow,
Uh,
I love it.
ex Navy SEAL. I cannot get enough David Goggins. Woke up this morning listening to David Goggins. Uh, I love listening
So
to.
funny.
Oh yeah, the dude's amazing. I
It's
love listening
it's
to the
just like
Kobe. Mhm.
no. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It's just that no one else will make you feel like you're not doing enough, but like Goggins, you know.
Tell me about it. But it would also tell you to tell everyone else, you know, to stick it. You know, and so
It's a
we
good
need to
point.
know that we. I don't need you in the way you think I do. I have everything I need here. And that's his point. You have everything you need right here. I love listening to Kobe Bryant's Mamba mentality. I cannot get enough of the Mamba
Man,
mentality. So I'm all that.
Same.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's actually the main key separator between him and Michael Jordan. That specifically.
I have a cousin who's a big Chicago Bulls fan, and we go into this battle. Who would I pick? And I tell him Michael Jordan probably would not make my first team. I said if we're going position
Wow.
by position, he would not. I'm taking Kobe Bryant over him, and the reason is when Michael Jordan came into the league, there was nothing. There was no one in the league he could target that he would say, "I need to be better than that guy." You know,
Damn.
that person is my rival. I have to beat this person. So as great as he
You're
was,
Kobe's Jordan.
yeah. And so Kobe comes in. When they first get on the court together, I'm trying to beat this dude right here. This is the bar for me. This is the gold standard. There was no gold standard for Michael Jordan. And so Kobe Bryant has to develop this mental mindset that takes him
Damn.
beyond where he originally thought he was going to be simply because the gold standard was on the court with him. And his mentality, when you listen to him, it's like, oh my goodness, yes. So, position by position, if I'm taking a shooting guard and I know I need someone who is an absolute killer every day of the week, I'm taking Kobe Bryant. My shooting guard is Stephen Curry. My center will be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar all day. My power forward will be Wilt Chamberlain, and my small forward will be Larry Bird. So, yeah,
Damn.
Michael Jordan, you will lead out
Damn.
the next team. Yeah, you'll have Karl Malone on your team. I'll have you pair up with AI. I'll have you over there. And I think for a shooting small forward, I'll take Reggie Miller. Yeah, the brother will just drain all
Hell
day.
yeah.
Yeah, and just off the top of my head, I could see Kevin Durant. But yeah, and of course, there's no right or wrong with any of those, but that's where I'm
For
going.
sure. That's interesting too, because how much do we hear about mindset being one of those cliche things that everyone talks about? But that's like literally Kobe's brand.
Yeah, and that's what you don't hear about Michael Jordan. You're starting to hear about it now that Kobe's away. He's starting to make stuff, but you never heard about that during Michael's career. It was Kobe's thing from day one, and everybody knew about it. His
Man,
mindset was off the charts. And if you're
super good
scoring
point.
60
Glad we
points in
talked.
your last game in your 20th year, you're scoring 60? Come on, man.
Yeah,
Please.
he didn't slow down. That's
No,
crazy.
no.
He was only getting better.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you handle memories that resurface unexpectedly?
I got to pull over. Like I said, I hear a song, Midnight Train in Georgia. I have to pull over. Uh, my family and I, we will be watching something, and I'm in tears. And I just said, I have to leave the room. And they know, well, we know what's going on. So when they resurface unexpectedly, I try to regulate my emotions as best I can. Usually I'm pretty good at it, but sometimes I'm not. And I just give myself permission to just let it go. It's okay. It's,
Was
don't,
it
don't worry
hard
about it.
and was it hard and do you find it hard to find meaning and purpose after experiencing trauma?
Oh, there's all kind of meaning and purpose. There's meaning and purpose about after coming through trauma all day. The first being that you are okay. You can handle it. You were, as one friend of mine would say, you were built Tonka tough, and so now you can just go out and just drive the truck all day long. The meaning is that you are you are an amazing human being. That's my meaning. Knowing that everything I went through and all my failures and all of my disappointments, not with me, but for my sisters and brother, that with all that said, I like myself. People like me. People enjoy being around me. So I must be doing something right. Just keep doing what I'm doing. And Am I going to get it right every time still? Well, no, absolutely not. But am I trying to hurt people? No. I'm doing the best I can do. But my meaning is I do the best I can with what I have every single day. And let me get better from moment to moment. That's my meaning behind everything that I'm doing. Just get better.
Here's a really good question. What advice would you give to someone just starting their healing journey?
Give yourself permission to be okay, to let your pain overtake you because it will. You don't need to hide it. You don't need to set it aside. Give yourself permission. It kind of reminds me in fitness when you're working out and you're eating really, really good. And then they have the day that's called a cheat day. And the cheat day means you can eat whatever you want. I think that's a horrible description, cheat day. Because who are you
Yeah.
cheating? And it's like with your trauma. Let it go. Why are you hiding? Who are you cheating? Let it go. It's not a cheat day. It's a day that you give yourself permission to eat whatever you want. You've given yourself permission.
Yeah.
So you're not cheating. So in trauma, give yourself permission to let go. Give yourself permission to eat and absorb the pain because you need it. It is a reminder. It is also helps you with your growth, your spiritual growth.
How much of that language that you just corrected is actually important, though?
The cheat versus permission,
Yeah,
which,
just in general, like because we're talking about self talk right here. So
yeah,
I think our perception of how we view these words and the wording that we use can really make a difference.
for me, it's critical that I know that I've given myself permission to be in who it is I am at any given moment. Like I said, am I going to be perfect? No, but it's okay. It's fine. What am I going to do with the knowledge that I wasn't perfect? What am I going to do with that next? Well, you could either try to fix it, you could let it go, or you could double down. Either way, either decision, you are choosing what you're going to do next. So give yourself permission. So for me, the language is it's critical. It's the self-talk. It's that isolation mindset. If you're giving yourself permission, it's kind of like, okay, I'm bringing everyone else in on it. And so I'm in this community thing and I'm okay. And everyone knows I'm not cheating. I'm giving myself permission. Do you want some? So this is a thing.
The other thing, the other thing I feel that's important is to acknowledge that you're not your thoughts, right? Like it's very easy to think like I let this happen to me and then play that victim mindset. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think ultimately where we are every day at any moment is our responsibility. I think it is based on decisions that we've made, good or bad. And I think the important part of that is recognizing where you are is usually of your own making, of your own doing. Because if you say it's not my fault, then you're giving away your power to choose and be who you are to someone else. If I'm not measuring up, I'm going to say, I'm not doing something. Where do I need to change? Let me examine this. I'm not willing to give over my power to anyone else. And that's just because of the trauma that I went through. You know, I know what that's like having someone else control the strings and I'm their puppet. I know it. I went through that for years. So we
Damn.
are where we are, except that it is the decisions that we make. And what are you going to do next? That's the only thing that matters. What are you going to do about it?
Damn. It's a good way to put it. I mean, it's a little dark too, but definitely a good way to put it still.
But it's reality,
Can you
you know.
yeah.
It is the real thing.
What about the interplay between trauma and identity?
I think trauma and identity can be summed up. I don't know if we talked about this earlier with I think a lot of certainly as when we're young, our identity is determined by who our parents are, especially if you're a young boy. And this can have impact on you as you grow older. When you're a little boy and you have no identity, you are so and so's son. And so and so's baggage is placed on you, good or bad. You're not that person, but it is people are going to identify you that like that. And so with trauma, trauma can be like your father. If you let it latch on to you, it will continue to determine who you are and what you're about. So my son is coming home from school and he showed me his report card. And at this point, my mother, and we didn't change the name for years, I am going under the last name of my stepfather, the one who molested my sisters, because everything, driver's license, everything about me is in that name from when I was a kid. But I get my son's report card in the second grade. And Joe, I look at the name and I say, da 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 da, da and the last name. And I started getting angry because the last name was triggering me to be angry. And I realized I cannot be angry at my son because he has that name. It's not his fault. He hasn't done anything. And I immediately realized, oh, shoot, I need to get rid of that identity, not just for me, but for him, because it's impacting my relationship with him. And so
Damn.
your identity is really important. As you get older, you take control of your identity. When I was a kid, I did not have control of it. But as I got older, I had control of it. It then became, what do I want my identity to be with me? And then how do I want people to view my identity? And so
That's a hard question, also, by the way.
that was a big lesson for me. But I looked at my son's report card. He's standing next to me, and I'm getting angry, and I know that energy is going down to him, and like he had nothing to do with this. Ooh, no, I got to get rid of that.
Yeah, you're just feeling the energy, seeing it transferring, and that's a lot of self-awareness
Yeah,
there.
I was putting that identity on him, and like, oh, his identity is me. Like mine were with my stepfather, and my father's like, oh, I can't. That's generational.
Is
I'm not doing it.
is
So
that
within a couple of
is that
weeks, we
just
changed our
projection?
last name. No, it wasn't projection. We changed our last name a couple of weeks after that. We got rid of
Interesting.
his last name
Damn.
because it was negative energy. I saw it
Did you
for
go
what it
back to
was.
back to your original? I'm guessing like a maiden name.
No, my mother's family is absolutely revered in Portland. They are legendary in Portland. Whitney. My grandfather was great. My uncles were great. My mother, we know her story. So we decided we wanted to go with a name that we really liked, that we had a positive impact. So we went with my mother's maiden name in honor of my mother's family, not her. So that's where Whitney comes from. Catherine
Damn.
is
I
my
would
wife's
probably
maiden.
no. Go ahead, finish it.
Say Catherine is my wife's last name. Whitney is mine, and we wanted our family to have the same last name, children. So we became Catran-Whitney. But I am so proud to know that I have my grandfather and my uncle's last name. It is a great source of pride for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if I did that, I can relate on that aspect too. Where my mom's side, I have a lot of pride in the entrepreneurship spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely
Mm-hmm.
relate to that one. How has your understanding of empathy evolved through your healing journey?
Started with me. Like I said, the empathy when I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror and said, "You're a good guy. You're okay." That was a big moment of empathy for me with me. I believe you cannot give people something you don't give yourself. And I can't be empathetic effectively if I'm pretending. But authentically, I could be empathetic if I feel empathy for me. Okay. So my view of empathy today wasn't always this way, is that everyone, for the most part, they're okay. They need more, probably, they need people to be empathetic toward them, to understand, to be willing to show them some grace. So because I can do that for myself, I can do that for other people. And to me, that's what empathy is.
It's a really good answer. How do you maintain hope during difficult times, especially relating to the trauma or the healing journey?
Well, that's what my book Hopelessness that I'm writing now is all about. How do you find hope in the middle of all that? And I can tell you the basic tenets of finding hope are latching on to those people, places, and things in your past that kept you tethered to who you are. Because it's easy to lose yourself in the midst of trauma and never find your way back. So when I am having difficulty, I think back to picnics. I go to Soul Food Sunday on a Saturday. I go to, it's those things. They keep me emotionally tied to the things that are important to me. There are friends that I know I can always call on. And those are the ways that you find hope when you're trying to and you lost it, is reconnecting with those anchor points in your life, because you can spiral out of control really, really fast.
And would you say that it's all right to create new traditions if you don't have any?
It's funny you asked me that, because my brother and I, we were talking about tradition. I am not a big believer of tradition. I know traditions are good, but the
Mm-hmm.
problem with traditions for me is they keep you grounded in the past. So when people say, well, I'm doing this because it's tradition, or it's a traditional way to do it, or we've always done it because of tradition, that's not a good enough excuse to keep doing it, if that's your reason. So I think
Yeah.
creating new traditions are important, because new traditions are about you and how you view the world. Not everyone sees the things that you do the same way. You may like past traditions, and that is just absolutely spectacular. But if a tradition is impacting you in a negative way, you do not have to accept it. I do not like. I told my brother that, he's like, "Dang, dude, you you got some viewpoints on some things." I said, "Look, did you like the tradition of that in the past?" No, I said, "Well, neither did I, so I created new ones." It's as simple as that. I wanted something new, and if I don't like it, I create a new tradition. Tradition
It's
can keep so many people doing so many things not right, simply because of tradition. We deal with that every day around the world. Tradition is the
such a good
driver.
point, because
Uh,
you could even argue that many of our nation's problems are from not fixing and adopting new traditions, right?
progress is about new traditions, and you're absolutely right. We get locked down in the past, and so much of the past does not fit with today, but they will go back there. Why? If it doesn't work with who we and who you are today, it's create a new tradition.
Damn. That one's deep too. Uh, how do you balance vulnerability with strength and healing?
I think they're essentially one and the same. They're part of the same coin. Uh, Strength comes from being vulnerable and knowing that vulnerability is a superpower. Uh, my sister and I were talking about this as well yesterday. She is with a company that asks her to speak a lot, and it has a lot of women involved. And she said, "You know what? I realized recently that me being vulnerable is strength for other people. They might not be able to speak for themselves or feel strong enough to embrace their space. But through my vulnerability and me showing who I am and what I've gone through, not only strengthens them, but it makes me strong just as well, because I now know me helping them is helping me. So that's why I say I think being vulnerable and having strength are part of both sides of the same coin. You can't be strong unless you've been vulnerable. Otherwise, where does the growth come from? And you can't be,
Man,
so you just have to go through it.
no, I definitely like her outlook on that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
When I rewatch this, I'm sure that one's going to stick with me. What lessons have you learned about the human spirit through your experiences?
it's it's a pretty powerful thing, that it has untapped potential. We can achieve whatever we want to achieve if we choose to do so, if we say yes as opposed to no. The human spirit is one that um, wants to be free, wants to experience growth, doesn't always like tradition, wants to be creative. And from for me and what I've experienced, that runs pretty big with me. It runs pretty long. So I feel like to do a lot of things that I otherwise wouldn't do if I didn't give, if I wasn't um, have as free a spirit today compared to what I didn't have when I was younger. Yeah.
Damn. Wow. Anything else you want to touch on before I ask the what it means to you to be more than rich question? That's usually my finale question.
Man, we have covered so much. I don't think there's anything else. We've spent a lot of time together here, and it has been an absolute pleasure. Every now and then I run into the host that wants to talk for 2 3 hours, and I'm happy to do so because they really want to delve deep into what is going on. So what I would just like to say, this has been one of the most enjoyable conversations I have had with anyone on this topic, and thank you so much. Like I said, we've gotten into a lot of stuff. You even brought out my brother's getting all the girls and me not, but that's okay. That's all right. Being vulnerable,
You're
right?
like you're plotting.
But you know what? I've been married 38 years and they haven't. So
That is funny. The show's theme is more than rich. So what does it mean to you to be more than rich?
more than rich is just, it is happiness, from helplessness to hopefulness and being happy. Oftentimes we think of rich as a monetary thing, and it's always good when you have them kind of riches. Let me, I'm not hating
Mm-hmm.
on that, but rich is a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's a spiritual awareness about who you are and what you can be and what you can offer the world. So richness for me is being able to speak to people like you. It's being able to share my story. I am rich in knowledge and experience, and I look to share that and hopefully help other people heal. Uh, that is what more than rich is to me. I love the title of your podcast. I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing. And I like that you like spending time and asking very deep, meaningful questions. So I appreciate that.
Hit them with your promotions, anything, website, your book, where to find you, how to contact you, everything.
Okay. My book is Helplessness: The Emotional Health Challenges Brothers Experience After We Learn Our Sisters Have Been Sexually Abused by Our Parents. As you know, it's a brother story. It's my story. It's my family story. You can get it at Amazon. My website, where you can get the book and bunch of free stuff. There are resources there as well. There's a 16-part podcast where I speak to my sister. I speak to my brother for the first time. I get us together as well and really get an understanding of who we are and what we're about and what our challenges have been. So there's much to learn and experience there. That's at keepercatran.whitney.com. You can catch all of those videos as well and more on my Keeper Catran-Whitney YouTube channel, which is things are being put there every day. My Keeper Catran-Whitney TikTok, Instagram, it's all there. My Facebook page, Keeper Catran-Whitney author page. Those are ways to reach me. If you just want to shoot me an email, because I speak on this topic all the time, send me an email at keepercw.author@gmail.com, and we will address it. Look forward
And
to speaking to all of you.
and if anyone's specifically trying to get into touch to hire you, can you just give a little background on what you do and process for that?
Well, what I talk about and is this particular subject, child sexual abuse. I look to elevate the voices of brothers in the child sexual abuse space. I look to bring awareness to our challenges, our emotional challenges, and look to let other men who are going through what me and my brothers experience, let them know they're not alone. And also help to educate sisters so sisters begin to talk to their brothers so we can become allies instead of enemies, which is often the case. I love speaking. I do it very well. And I can talk to any size audience all day. Look, I've spoken to you for a couple of
Yeah,
hours.
yeah.
So
Just
that's
trying to
it.
put a word to your ideal audience. Just like, is it schools that would ideally be trying to outsource you? That's all.
My ideal audience is schools, it's civic organizations, it's churches, it's law enforcement. I've spoken to law enforcement as well. I've spoken to therapists, groups as well. Because this is a global situation, the audience literally is everyone who is in a family. Because you never know what's going on in your family. We didn't. And then what do you do afterwards? So yeah, I talk to any and everyone.
Very, very inspiring episode today. So I definitely appreciate your vulnerability. I know that's not easy to talk about. I think you spoke to a lot of information nobody had an idea is going on in the world, and very niche topic. So hopefully we can shed some light on it.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
We'll be in touch soon. I'll let you know when this is out. And I'll
You
follow you
take
on
it.
social media. I got all the links in the description below if anyone wants to look for it.
You take care.
Got you. Thanks. You too. Keep